Chapter 2111. Qian Tianjiao's fear. The instant he killed several cultivators, Zhuo Wen's sword momentum did not change as he suddenly brandished the purple sword in his right hand. The sixth move of the destruction sword art, Firmament Dao Domain. The purple sword light was like a waterfall as it floated upside down and actually transformed into an incomparably huge territory. The entire territory was extremely large, and it was purely formed by terrifying sword qi. The remaining 10 cultivators had long been scared out of their wits. After the terrifying sword dragon instantly killed several of their companions, they wanted to retreat and escape. Unfortunately, the moment these 10 cultivators fled, the terrifying territory formed by the sword light fell from the starry sky and suddenly pressed down on these 10 cultivators, causing them to be unable to breathe as they were firmly pressed to the ground. Great Void Sword. Zhuan lightly stepped out with his right foot, and sword qi erupted from the bottom of his foot like a gale. His entire body transformed into a faintly discernible sword light, and his speed was extremely fast as he shuttled between the 10 cultivators who were firmly suppressed by the Firmament Dao Domain. Great Void Sword was the 7th move of the destruction sword art. It used the climax of the sword art to swim in the void. The person was like the sword, and the sword was like the person. The person and the sword were one, and there was no distinction between them. The 10 cultivators all roared as they unleashed their own illusory bridges. Their strength suddenly erupted by several times, and the terrifying Firmament Dao Domain was actually completely shaken. Unfortunately, Yuan had already swept over while stepping on the sword qi. His speed was like light, and everywhere he passed, sword light flew. Everywhere he passed, the 10 cultivators were unable to block him. The Firmament Dao Domain shattered into countless specks of light, and Zhuan slowly walked out from the rain-like specks of light with an indifferent gaze. A drop of blood slowly streaked across Zhuo Wen's purple sword and finally condensed at the tip of the sword. It was as bright as a flower. After the 10 cultivators shattered the Sky Dome Dao Domain, they stood quietly on the spot, not moving at all. With a cracking sound, the illusory bridges behind the 10 cultivators shattered into powder, and the heads of the 10 cultivators all flew up. Blood surged into the sky as they all died. You want to kill me by sending a bunch of useless people? Zhuan slowly raised his head and looked at Qian Tianjiao's ugly face. The killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. Qian Tianjiao's eyes were gloomy. He raised his right hand and shouted, "Fleet, listen to my order. Kill this man." Also, all the disciples of Carefree Palace, step forward and lay down the heaven and earth reversal array to kill this kid. As the palace lord of Carefree Palace, Qian Tianjiao was no fool. This young man named Zhuan had killed more than 10 elite cultivators of Carefree Palace in one move. How could he not know that this lad was not simple? Therefore, he did not dare to be careless this time. He mobilized all of Carefree Palace's combat power. Many cultivators around Carefree Palace naturally heard Qian Tianjiao's command and their hearts skipped a beat. Qian Tianjiao's order almost caused Carefree Palace to turn out in full force. This was something that Carefree Palace would only do when it was on the brink of death. But now that Qian Tianjiao had made a move, it was clear that Qian Tianjiao valued this ordinary young man. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 20 flying ships surrounded Zhuan like shuttles. Cannons were instantly aimed at Zhuan. Zhuan raised his eyebrows. He realized that many powerful divine senses were bursting out from within these 20 flying ships. These divine senses firmly locked onto Zhuo Wen without any scruples. It was airtight, and it was almost impossible for Zhuo Wen to escape. Zhuan knew that these flying ships' aim was mainly based on the divine senses of the cultivators controlling the flying ships. However, Zhuo Wen's soul was extremely powerful. What was the difference between these divine senses locking onto Zhuan and a sheep entering a tiger's den? Zhuan activated the 3,000 over divine soul galaxies in his soul space. Instantly, the terrifying divine senses swallowed up all the divine senses locked onto him like a hurricane. Moreover, Zhuo Wen's enormous divine senses were like maggots in a corpse. They followed these 20 divine senses and quickly entered the various flying ships, entering the souls of the cultivators controlling the flying ships. My head hurts so much. What's going on? My soul is actually suffering from a backlash. How can this kid's soul be so powerful? Quick, help me. It's too painful. In just an instant, the cultivators on the flying ships were in a mess. Then, one of the flying ships trembled continuously. Then, the deep cannons on its body directly fired a terrifying attack at the flying ship next to it. Boom! The flying ship that was attacked exploded into countless pieces. The cultivators inside all died along with the explosion. In an instant, the entire fleet was in a mess. They began to shoot at each other. The dazzling light rays were like trails that cut through the starry sky, dragging long tails. Explosions rang out continuously, and in just 10 breaths, the entire fleet was destroyed. Zhuowen, on the other hand, walked out unscathed. At this moment, Qian Tianjiao had already mobilized all the disciples of Carefree Palace. There were tens of thousands of them, and they rushed over in an imposing manner. However, they did not expect to see such a shocking scene. Qian Tianjiao's face was slightly pale, but he still commanded calmly, "Set up the heaven and earth reversal formation. Kill this kid for me." Although the tens of thousands of Carefree Palace disciples were somewhat afraid of Zhuon, they did not dare to disobey Qian Tianjiao's orders. They rushed out one after another, each of them taking a mysterious step and surrounding Zhuon. They actually set up a terrifying formation in an instant. Zhuon stood in the same spot and quietly watched the Carefree Palace disciples set up the heaven and earth reversal formation. During this process, Zhuon did not make a move to stop them. This time, what Zhuon wanted to do was to make Qian Tianjiao feel despair and regret. He would not kill Qian Tianjiao now, but he could take down Carefree Palace step by step and crush Qian Tianjiao's hope, causing him to fall into complete despair. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to capture Qian Tianjiao. Instead, he silently watched Qian Tianjiao use all his skills. "I don't believe you can withstand the heaven and earth reversal formation," Qian Tianjiao said with a ferocious expression. Within the formation, the mocking smile on Zhuowen's face became even more intense. He slowly extended his sleeve and took out a rusty ancient sword from his spirit ring. This ancient sword was the king's sword that Thun had obtained from the ancient sword tomb. The moment the king's sword appeared, an earth-shattering sword hum resounded from the spirit ring. Then, numerous ancient swords flew out, emitting sharp sword light. In an instant, more than 9,000 ancient swords flew out, forming a terrifying sword light storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Once the sword light storm was formed, it blasted towards the heaven and earth reversal formation without mercy. In an instant, the formation was filled with a monstrous blood-red light. In an instant, 1/10 of the tens of thousands of Carefree Palace disciples who were maintaining the formation were killed. Zhuon did not hold back. Controlling the king's sword, he turned the 9,000 ancient swords into an even more terrifying sword light storm. From the outside, one could see that within the heaven and earth reversal formation, terrifying ear-piercing noises were frequently heard. The smell of blood was even more nauseating. The heaven and earth reversal formation did not last long. A hole was suddenly torn open above it. Countless corpses mixed with blood fell from the sky. They were deader than dead. A terrifying sword light storm slowly swept out from the hole. Within the sword light storm stood an extremely young man. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the sword light storm around the young man was completely formed by ancient swords. Moreover, each ancient sword had an extraordinary origin and was extremely powerful. Boom, boom, boom. The sword light storm's power suddenly increased. The terrifying storm tore the huge heaven and earth reversal formation into countless pieces. The tens of thousands of Carefree Palace disciples who were maintaining the heaven and earth reversal formation were also annihilated in an instant. At this moment, Qian Tianjiao was completely shocked. Not only Qian Tianjiao, but the surrounding cultivators were also shocked. Their jaws almost dropped. The father and son pair, Fang Yang and Fang Zhen, were horrified. A tinge of regret rose in their hearts. What kind of monster is this kid? This was the only thought in Fang Zhen's mind. Palace Master Qian, what other tricks do you have? Feel free to use them. I, Zhuon, am standing right here. Take them all. Zhuon stepped into the starry sky. The sword-light storm revolved around him. His white robe fluttered in the wind. However, Qian Tianjiao was scared out of his wits. Zhuowen's strength was too terrifying. Even the heaven and earth reversal formation was destroyed in an instant. He knew that with his strength, he was no match for Zhuowen. "I'll hand over your companions. Please let me live." Qian Tianjiao finally lowered his noble head and admitted defeat. Zhuowen only looked at Qian Tianjiao quietly. The latter felt his hair stand on end. He could only brace himself and say, "Your companions are in Carefree Palace. You can go in and look for them. I only ask for my life." Unfortunately, Zhuowen remained silent. However, the purple sword in his right hand broke the silence. The purple sword was extremely fast. It left his hand and flew towards Qian Tianjiao. Qian Tianjiao seemed to have sensed it. He took out a jade-colored disc from his spirit ring. Bang! The jade-colored disc blocked the purple sword. Qian Tianjiao took out another flying ship. He stepped into the flying ship and activated it, leaving the place in an instant. Unfortunately, not long after Qian Tianjiao left, a figure covered in black mist appeared. A third eye that contained terrifying heavenly lightning appeared between his eyebrows. Terrifying black lightning shot out. Rumble. Chapter 21:12. Destruction of Jade and Common Stone. At this moment, Qian Tianjiao's gaze was exceptionally gloomy. The moment he fell off the flying ship, he quickly retreated. At the same time, he threw out a divine artifact to set up a powerful defense around him. The black-clothed Zhuowen looked indifferently at Qian Tianjiao, who was making a big fuss. The corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile, but he did not move at all. Zhuowen's main body, whose white robes fluttered in the wind, slowly walked over to Qian Tianjiao. Qian Tianjiao was so frightened that he subconsciously moved forward. However, Qian Tianjiao had only moved a few steps when he realized that the black-clothed Zhuowen was still in front of him. He stopped in his tracks, feeling extremely conflicted. "What do you want?" Qian Tianjiao asked with an ugly expression. Zhuowen slowly walked over and said mockingly, "I should be the one asking you that. You captured my companions. What do you want from me? You killed my son and destroyed my Carefree Palace. Isn't this considered even?" Qian Tianjiao said in a low voice. Zhuowen smiled disdainfully and said, "You captured my companions and lured me here. Didn't you want to kill me? Now that you see that I'm powerful, you say something like that. Your skin is really thick." Although what Qian Tianjiao said was reasonable, one had to know that Qian Tianjiao wanted to kill him, Zhuowen. If he, Zhuowen, was not strong enough, he would definitely die here today. As for Ren Yanggan, Yun Chuyu, and the others, their fates would probably be even more miserable. However, there were no ifs in this world. Since Qian Tianjiao wanted to kill Zhuowen, and even involved his friends, Zhuowen did not intend to let this matter rest. Others had already bullied him. If he let them off so easily just because they begged for mercy, this was not Zhuowen's style. "Then what do you want?" Qian Tianjiao asked with an ugly expression. "Break one of your arms, kneel in front of me, and sincerely apologize to me. Then, personally bring me to release my friends, and I can spare your life," Zhuowen said slowly. If not for the fact that Qian Tianjiao didn't know how to appreciate favors, Zhuowen wouldn't have mustered so many people to cause trouble at Carefree Palace. Unfortunately, this was all because of Qian Tianjiao. Since it was Qian Tianjiao's fault, he should bear all the consequences alone. As expected, Qian Tianjiao's lips twitched and his face darkened. Many cultivators outside the Carefree Palace exchanged glances and looked at the hesitant Qian Tianjiao. These foreign cultivators were not from Carefree Palace. They were just ordinary cultivators who lived near Carefree Palace and relied on Carefree Palace to survive. The way they saw it, Carefree Palace was high and mighty, and the disciples inside had even more outstanding statuses. As the palace lord of Carefree Palace, Qian Tianjiao was rarely seen. In the eyes of these foreign cultivators, Qian Tianjiao was an expert among experts. Many cultivators revered and worshipped him. But now, this youth who had appeared out of nowhere had easily destroyed the fleet and all the disciples of Carefree Palace. Now, he was even asking the palace lord, Qian Tianjiao, to break one of his arms and kneel in apology. Such an absurd scene was happening right in front of their eyes. At the same time, they wanted to know if Qian Tianjiao would really do that. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But the outcome may be. Zhuo Wen flicked the purple sword's blade with his left hand. With a ding, the sword's hum was like an echo in an empty valley, reverberating in the surroundings. An unconcealable killing intent instantly filled the starry sky. Qian Tianjiao's expression changed drastically. He knew that if he didn't do as Zhuo Wen said, he would die without a doubt. His cultivation was at the 6th level of the Void Sky realm, 2 levels higher than Jun. But after witnessing Zhuo Wen's terrifying battle prowess, Qian Tianjiao knew that if he really stood up, he wouldn't be a match for this kid. Moreover, behind him was the black-robed Zhuo Wen, whose entire body was shrouded in demonic mist. The black-robed Zhuo Wen's aura was similarly vigorous and terrifying. Qian Tianjiao knew that if the two of them joined forces, he would definitely lose. After thinking about it, Qian Tianjiao finally sighed in his heart and decisively cut off his left arm. He then fell to his knees in front of Zhuo Wen and said in a deep voice, "I, Qian Tianjiao, have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended Senior Zhuo. I hope that Senior Zhuo will forgive me this time." Then, Qian Tianjiao kowtowed 3 times. The sound reverberated in the starry sky and lingered in the ears. The foreign cultivators were all stunned. Although most of them had guessed, they didn't expect Qian Tianjiao to kneel so decisively. An uproar arose, and the foreign cultivators began to discuss intensely. The noise was like a flood, endless. After this battle, Zhuo Wen's name would spread far and wide. Not far away, the father and son Fang Yang and Fang Zhen's faces were even more bitter. Even Qian Tianjiao had surrendered. What else could they say? "Let's go. Bring my friend out," Zhuo Wen said calmly. Qian Tianjiao stood up with his head slightly lowered. He took the lead and led the way, while Zhuo Wen slowly followed behind. "Master, do you need me to go with you?" the Emperor's spirit asked telepathically. Zhuo Wen waved his hand and replied, "Look after the two of them. I'll be back in a jiffy." Putting away the black-robed Zhuo Wen followed Qian Tianjiao into Carefree Palace. Carefree Palace was huge, but there wasn't a single person in sight. Zhuo Wen knew that he had killed most of the Carefree Palace's disciples in the battle just now. Now, Carefree Palace was no different from an empty shell. After passing through a winding corridor with many twists and turns, Qian Tianjiao finally stopped. This was the deepest part of Carefree Palace, and there was a huge stone prison. Golden runes floated on the surface of the stone prison. It was obvious that a powerful restriction array had been set up. "Open," Zhuo Wen said calmly. Qian Tianjiao didn't answer. Instead, he formed a seal, and the golden runes on the surface of the stone prison suddenly dispersed. Then, the stone door quietly opened. The heavy sound of gears turning could be heard, and the scene inside the stone prison was revealed. However, the inside of the stone prison was too dark. It was impossible to see what was inside. Qian Tianjiao said in a low voice, "Senior Zhuo, the 4 of them are imprisoned here." Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed. His powerful divine sense swept through the stone prison. Indeed, he found 4 curled-up figures in the depths of the stone prison. "You go in first." Out of caution, Wen let Qian Tianjiao go in first. The latter didn't resist and went straight into the stone prison, walking deeper into it. Zhuo Wen silently followed behind, his brows furrowed. He felt that something was wrong. However, his divine sense swept through the place several times and didn't find anything unusual. Although he was puzzled, he didn't think too much about it. Finally, the 2 of them reached the depths of the stone prison. Then, Zhuo Wen gloomily saw Yun Chuyu in Bingyun and the other 3 bound by thick chains. Moreover, the 4 of them were riddled with wounds. They had probably been cruelly punished. Perhaps because she noticed that someone had come, In Bingyun let out a soft groan and slowly woke up. Then she saw Qian Tianjiao, and her beautiful eyes instantly erupted like a volcano. She was abnormally angry. But soon, In Bingyun noticed Zhuo Wen behind Qian Tianjiao. Her beautiful eyes shook, and there was a misty look in them. In Bingyun called out dryly, "It's fine. You're all fine now." Zhuo Wen released the black-clothed Zhuo Wen, who kept a close eye on Qian Tianjiao. Then he walked forward and completely untied the chains on the four of them. Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan gradually woke up as well. The moment they saw Zhuan, they cried tears of joy. "Brother Ren, what's wrong?" Zhuan's gaze fell on Ren Yong'an. He untied the chains on Ren Yong'an's body and found that Ren Yong'an's lifeless eyes were open. He was leaning against the corner of the wall, lost in thought. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes revealed a look of indignation. She pointed at Qian Tianjiao and said, "It's this guy. He forcefully searched Brother Ren's soul last time and caused Brother Ren's divine soul to be destroyed. He even lost the chance to recover. Since then, he's become a walking corpse." Zhuowen's mind shook, and a surge of anger surged in his chest. He turned around and grabbed Qian Tianjiao's collar. Although Void Sky cultivators had powerful recovery abilities, if someone forcefully searched their divine soul, the damage to their divine soul would be permanent and even destroyed. Void Sky cultivators could not recover from the damage to their divine soul. Once the divine soul was damaged, that person's life would be over. Take Mu Chenxue for example. She had fallen into a deep sleep after the yin and yang in her divine soul had been unbalanced. If it weren't for the sun and moon grass, the chances of her waking up would have been extremely low. The damage to Qian Tianjiao's soul was even more serious than Mu Chenxue's. In this world, there were almost no godly medicines that could repair divine soul damage. Even if there were, they were extremely rare and difficult to obtain. Now, Ren Yong'an's divine soul had been forcefully searched, and his divine soul had been severely damaged. It was likely that he would never be able to recover in this lifetime and would become a walking corpse. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's heart was filled with guilt. At the same time, he was filled with an unprecedented killing intent towards Qian Tianjiao. However, Qian Tianjiao was no longer timid. A mocking smile appeared on his lips as he said, "Before I came in, I knew that I wouldn't be able to get out alive. That's why I was prepared to die with you. Then, you killed my son, destroyed my carefree palace, and completely ruined everything I had. Do you really think that I would be willing to give in just like that? Ha, then you're gravely mistaken. I lured you here to kill you." Qian Tianjiao seemed to have gone mad. His eyes were bloodshot as he laughed loudly. Rumble. Then, the golden runes floating and rotating on the surface of the stone prison actually exploded with a dazzling golden light at this moment. It was as if countless suns had risen. Then, the stone prison was enveloped by this terrifying golden light and exploded with a loud bang. If one looked from the outside, they would see that the interior of the huge carefree palace was emitting a terrifying golden light that was becoming more and more exuberant. In the end, Carefree Palace and even the meteorite it was on collapsed with a loud bang, forming countless cracks. Chapter 21:13. Exploiting the Xiantian Valley Run. Carefree Palace is going to explode. The abnormality of Carefree Palace immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding cultivators. Then, the first cultivators to react scattered like monkeys on a fallen tree, fleeing the vicinity of Carefree Palace for their lives. Rumble. The explosion of Carefree Palace was too fast. Other than the first few cultivators to react, the rest of the cultivators were all turned into dust by the force of the explosion. The few cultivators who managed to escape rejoiced when they saw the terrifying explosion, but they also retreated far away. Their hearts trembled, and their eyes were filled with fear. Di Ling's pupils constricted. He retreated far away with Fang Yang and Fang Zhen, but his gaze was extremely solemn. Although he did not know what had happened inside, he knew that all of this was Qian Tianjiao's doing. This explosion is very terrifying. I wonder if Master can withstand it? Di Ling whispered worriedly. An earth-shattering roar came from the center of the explosion. The terrifying sound wave was even more terrifying than a hurricane. Then, the crowd was shocked to discover that in the center of the explosion, a huge and terrifying shadow slowly appeared. It then leaped up, ignoring the terrifying explosion's energy. This beast's body was extremely huge. It was several times larger than the meteorite that Carefree Palace was on. There were many sharp horns on its head, and its body merged into the starry sky. There were many images of galaxies in it, and it looked exceptionally strange. Feeling the terrifying aura from this beast, many of the surrounding cultivators trembled. Their faces turned pale, and a feeling of worship rose in their hearts. On this huge beast, Zhuan, dressed in white, stood quietly with a purple sword in his hand. Other than Zhuan, there were also Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, Hong Shan, and Ren Yangon. Other than Ren Yangon, whose eyes were blank, the other three were shocked. They would never forget the scene in the stone dungeon. Qian Tianjiao had completely detonated the stone dungeon. This explosion had the terrifying power to destroy heaven and earth. Without exception, they all looked hopeless. However, Zhuan only said, "Leave everything to me." Then, the black fog around the black-clothed Zhuan, who was standing not far away, suddenly exploded. He revealed his true form in an instant and turned into the incomparably huge prehistoric ferocious beast in front of him. They only felt their vision darken as the huge beast rushed out from the center of the explosion. Only now did they realize that they were not dead, but were saved. The self-destruction of the carefree palace was indeed terrifying. Moreover, Qian Tianjiao was like a moth darting into a flame as he rushed towards Zhuan and self-destructed his illusory heavenly bridge, wanting to perish together with Zhuan. However, Qian Tianjiao was wrong. Zhuan had Devour as his trump card. Devour's physical strength had reached an unparalleled level, and he had cultivated the indestructible heaven and earth to the highest level. Once Devour revealed his true form, even a Void Sky 7th-step cultivator would not be able to kill him easily. Zhuan looked at the wounds all over Devour's body and frowned. He knew that the explosion of the Carefree Palace could not be underestimated. Although Devour had blocked it, he had paid a heavy price. Putting Devour away, Zhuan asked him to find the Heavenly Domain star essence in his spirit ring to recover. Then, he brought Yin Bingyun and the others to a place not far from the Emperor's spirit. Big Brother Zhua, this person's aura is so terrifying. He is definitely not someone to be trifled with. We should not get close. Yun Chuyu stretched out her slender hand and pulled on the corner of Zhuowen's clothes. Although Yun Chuyu and the others' cultivation was not high, they still had good eyesight. Qian Tianjiao was a Void Sky 6th-step expert, and they had seen him before. However, the Emperor's spirit's aura was as strong as the vast starry sky. It was definitely much more terrifying than Qian Tianjiao. It was very likely that he was a Void Sky 7th-step expert, or even an 8th-step expert. Although they believed that Zhuowen's strength was not ordinary, they did not think that Zhuowen would be safe against such an expert. "Master, are you okay?" Just as Zhuowen was about to explain, the Emperor's spirit brought Fang Yang and Fang Jin over and bowed respectfully. Master, Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and the three women were dumbfounded. They all sucked in a breath of cold air. They could not believe that this terrifying expert, who seemed to be a Void Sky 7th-step or 8th-step expert, actually called Zhuowen Master. Was there something wrong with their ears? I forgot to introduce him. His name is Di Ling. He is a servant that I have just taken in. His strength is at the Void Sky 8th step. Zhuowen smiled. Yin Bingyun and the other two women sucked in a breath of cold air again. Their heads buzzed as they finally accepted this unbelievable reality. Yin Bingyun smiled bitterly. Jin, although I knew that you were not simple, I still underestimated you. You are too abnormal. Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan nodded in agreement. Zhuowen's aura was only at the Void Sky 4th step. It just so happened that Zhuowen, who had reached the 4th level of Void Heaven, had a servant who had reached the 8th level of Void Heaven. This was truly inconceivable. Di Ling's expression was normal. He nodded slightly at Yin Bingyun and the other two women, then silently followed behind Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze fell on Fang Yang and Fang Jin. Fang Jin felt Zhuowen's gaze and his body shook. He quickly smiled and said, "Brother Zhuowen, this is all a misunderstanding. This has nothing to do with our Xian Tian Valley. It was the idea of Carefree Palace's Qian Tianjiao to capture your companion. We did not know about it." Fang Yang chimed in as well. He kept saying nice things to Zhuowen with a fawning look on his face. Zhuowen, on the other hand, had a cold expression on his face as he said placidly, "Like I said, I will pay a visit to your Xian Tian Valley. Now that the matter with Ashoka Palace is settled, it's time for me to pay a visit to your Xiantian Valley. Hearing this, Feng Yang's legs went weak. He quickly knelt on the ground and said with fear, Senior Zhua, please let our Xiantian Valley go this time. I am willing to pay any price. As the Xiantian Valley's valley master, Feng Yang had a high status. At this moment, he was kneeling in front of an unknown young man and begging for mercy. If other cultivators in the far west saw this, their jaws would drop. However, the surrounding cultivators were not surprised by this scene. After seeing Zhuowen destroy Carefree Palace, they had already classified Zhuowen as a terrifying and ruthless person that they could not afford to offend. Furthermore, Xiantian Valley's strength was on par with Carefree Palace. If even Carefree Palace was destroyed, it would be more than easy for this young man to destroy Xiantian Valley. Zhuowen smiled and said, Don't worry, I will not do anything rash this time. If your Xiantian Valley is sincere enough, I am not a bad person. Feng Yang rolled his eyes and quickly said, Senior Zhua, I am willing to contribute 50% of Xiantian Valley's resources to you. What do you think? Unknowingly, Feng Yang also changed the way he addressed Zhuowen and became extremely respectful. Zhuowen shook his head and did not say anything. Feng Yang's eyes narrowed and he said solemnly, Then 70% will do. Zhuowen still shook his head, but Feng Yang's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and said, 80%, this is my limit. Senior Zhua, please do me a favor. Zhuowen sneered and said, I want 99%. I am already giving you a lot of face by not destroying your entire Xiantian Valley. You have no right to bargain. Feng Yang's body trembled and he lowered his head and said, Yes, yes, yes. Senior Zhua, you are right. I will contribute 99% of Xiantian Valley's resources. Next, Zhuowen followed the Feng Yang father and son into the Xiantian Valley. Without any hesitation, he swept away 99% of the Xiantian Valley's resources and left. Looking at Zhuowen's back, Feng Zhen's eyes were filled with unwillingness and he said, Father, what is the difference between what Zhuowen did and destroying our Xiantian Valley? But Feng Yang sighed and said, It's better than being wiped out. We can still earn back the resources, but once the sect is wiped out, the Xiantian Valley will truly be finished. Let's seal the Xiantian Valley for 300 years and open it again after the Yuan Qi recovers. With that, Feng Yang walked into the depths of the Xiantian Valley with his back hunched. In Feng Zhen's eyes, Feng Yang seemed to have aged a few decades and he looked like a dying candle in the wind. In the huge airship, Zhuowen looked at Ren Yong'an's lifeless eyes and asked the King Spirit, King Spirit, do you have a way to heal him? The King's Spirit frowned and said, Master, this person's soul is too damaged. It is impossible to heal it. Seeing the King's Spirit shake his head, Zhuowen knew that Ren Yong'an's chances of recovery were too low. He had also probed Ren Yong'an's soul before, and he was very clear in his heart how severely damaged Ren Yong'an's soul was. Although Mu Qinshue's soul was also damaged, it was only a minor injury. But even so, it took Zhuowen a lot of effort to find the sun and moon grass to stabilize Mu Qinshue's soul. Ren Yong'an's condition was much worse than Mu Qinshue's. Even the Sky Realm's Lord could not do anything about it. Brother Ren, it is all because of me. But don't worry, as long as I, Zhuowen, am alive, I will take care of you. Chapter 21:14. Do Xianyun, where do you plan to go next? Inside the flying ship, Yin Bingyun looked at Zhuowen with a burning gaze. At the same time, her beautiful eyes glanced at the indifferent Emperor Spirit. In Yin Bingyun's opinion, although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the 4th step of the virtual sky realm, his true strength should not be inferior to the 7th step of the virtual sky realm. Most importantly, Yun had an 8th-step virtual sky realm slave by his side. An 8th-step virtual sky realm slave was already at the level of an ancestor of the 10 great sects in the star field. If this Emperor Spirit entered the star field, he would probably be able to stir up a storm. Even the 10 great sects would not dare to underestimate an existence like the Emperor Spirit. It could be said that the current Zhuowen had enough capital to establish a foothold in the star field. With Zhuowen's current foundation, even if countless cultivators in the star field knew that Zhuowen had a large amount of heavenly domain starry sky essence, who would dare to overestimate themselves and hunt him down? Back then, wasn't Zhuowen the target of public criticism because he was a rogue cultivator with no backing and no strength? If the heavenly domain starry sky essence was obtained by Yu Wuxi of the dark fantasy sect or the ancestors of the 10 great sects, who would dare to hunt him down so wantonly? Wasn't that just courting death? An ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. As long as you were strong enough, so what if you had a treasure? Yin Bingyun knew very well that if Zhuowen returned to the star field now, who would dare to touch him? Moreover, Yin Bingyun also knew Zhuowen's character quite well. She knew that Zhuowen was not a saint. Back in the star field, he had suffered so much hostility and was hunted down. Zhuowen would not easily erase this debt. Zhuowen grinned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes as he said, "Of course I'm going back to the star field. Yin will now take back what you owe me in the star field." Hong Shan and Yun Chuyu looked at each other. They could see the joy in each other's eyes. When Yu Wuxi chased Zhuowen, they hid in Zhuowen's spirit ring and knew how dangerous it was at that time. At that time, if Zhuowen died, the three of them would die without a doubt. At that time, the three women were full of grievances. Now that Zhuowen had turned over a new leaf and was planning to go back and settle all his debts, how could they not have the same thought in their hearts? It was just that their strength was too low, so they naturally did not have the strength to do so. However, Zhuowen could help them vent their anger. But before returning to the star field, I need to develop my forces in the far west. Zhuowen's eyes lit up like starlight. The far west land was the only place in the Great Brahma region that wasn't under the jurisdiction of Great Brahma. Moreover, due to the enormous magnetic field in this place, it was difficult for the 10 great sects of the star field to extend their reach here. Therefore, this was. The was to the far star. Your forces? Yin Bingyun and the other two women were shocked, and their beautiful eyes were filled with doubt. Although Zhuowen was very strong and had an 8-step void sky slave, there were only 2 people. But after all, there were only 2 of them, and an organization could not be developed with just 2 experts. Instead, it required a huge amount of resources, sufficient time, and a succession of talents. It could be said that developing one's forces was an extremely troublesome problem. If Zhuowen really wanted to develop his forces, he would have to spend a lot of energy. For the 3 women, it was not worth it. Zhuowen saw the confusion on the 3 women's faces, but he did not explain. Instead, he smiled and said, "You will know when the time comes. For now, let's go back to Dubhe City." The 3 women were puzzled, but they did not ask. They knew that Zhuowen would not do anything he was not confident in. After a while, the flying ship landed in the sky above Dubhe City. Zhuowen looked at the king's spirit, who nodded and jumped out of the flying ship, floating above Dubhe City. Rumble! The king's spirit unscrupulously released the 8-step void sky aura, and invisible ripples like countless mountains crushed every corner of Dubhe City. The martial artists who were originally coming and going in Dubhe City trembled when they felt the terrifying aura that was like a mountain. There were even some fellows whose strengths were comparatively weaker who directly fell flat on their faces, cutting an extremely sorry figure. What's going on? What a terrifying aura! This is much more terrifying than the City Lord of Dubhe City. The City Lord is a 6-step void sky master. This person's aura is even more terrifying than the City Lord. Could it be a 7-step void sky master? This kind of master is rare in the far west. It seems that a big shot has come. In Dubhe City, countless cultivators looked at the king's spirit floating above Dubhe City with awe. The moment the king's spirit released his aura, a figure rushed out from the depths of Dubhe City. This was an old man dressed in coarse clothes. His white hair hung down to his waist and fluttered in the wind, giving him a natural and unrestrained feeling. The old man's eyes flashed with a dignified look. He rushed in front of the king's spirit and said respectfully, "Do Xian, I didn't know you were here. Please forgive me. I don't know if you..." Before Do Xian could finish, he was interrupted by the king's spirit. "You are the City Lord of Dubhe City?" Do Xian lowered his posture and quickly said, "Yes, I am." What can I do for you, senior? At this moment, Dou Xian was extremely depressed. The middle-aged man in front of him was too terrifying. In front of this person he was like an ant. Dou Xian had seen a 7-step void sky cultivator before, but compared to this middle-aged man in front of him, he was still much weaker. This old man's luck can't be that bad, right? To actually encounter an 8th-step void heaven expert looking for trouble? Dou Xian let his imagination run wild rather helplessly in his heart. Moreover, Dou Xian really couldn't remember when he had offended such a master. The king's spirit nodded, withdrew his aura, and said indifferently, "My master has something to discuss with you. He hopes to talk further." Dou Xian, who was originally thinking nonsense, was stunned when he heard this. He suspected that he had heard wrong. The middle-aged man in front of him was a supreme expert of Void Heaven 8 steps. In the entire Far West land, there were probably only a few of such existences. Even in the entire Great Brahma domain, this person stood at the absolute pinnacle of experts. This kind of powerhouse would always make others slaves and be served by others. But now, such a master had finally appeared in front of Dou Xian, and he was calling someone else master. This made Dou Xian feel ridiculous and incredulous. In the entire Great Brahma Heaven domain, what kind of person could make a supreme expert at the 8th step of the Void Heaven realm serve as a servant? Perhaps only the ruler of the Great Brahma domain, Great Brahma, had this qualification. However, according to the rumors, Great Brahma never set foot in the Far West land after his battle with Luotian, so Dou Xian naturally didn't think the master the king's spirit was talking about was Great Brahma. As for what kind of genius would be able to make such a powerhouse serve as his servant? Dou Xian was very curious. Under Dou Xian's expectant gaze, a slender figure slowly walked down from the flying ship behind the king's spirit. It was a rather handsome young man. His white robes were whiter than snow, and he looked like a white lotus. Behind the young man, there were 3 beautiful women with different temperaments walking over slowly. Dou Xian was stunned, but not because of the young man's temperament or the 3 beautiful women behind him. It was because of the young man's aura. 4 steps Void Sky Master? Dou Xian was puzzled. He looked at the king's spirit in front of him as if to ask if the young man was really his master. The king's spirit didn't pay attention to Dou Xian. Instead, he bowed to Zhuowen and respectfully said, "Master, this person is Dou Xian, the city lord of Dubhe City." Dou Xian's mouth was wide open, but he couldn't say a word. Or rather, he didn't know what to say. At this moment, the shock in his heart filled his entire body. He felt that what was happening in front of his eyes was too shocking and unrealistic. A mere 4 steps Void Sky Master was actually the master of an 8 steps Void Sky Master. This scene completely overturned Dou Xian's worldview. "City Lord Dou, my name is Zhuowen. It's an honor to meet you." Zhuowen came in front of Dou Xian. Looking at the latter's dazed expression, he smiled slightly and took the initiative to extend his right hand. Dou Xian came back to his senses and quickly reached out his hand to shake it. His expression was full of anxiety and fear. "Brother Zhuo, Senior Zhuo, hello. I am the city lord of Dubhe City. Why are you looking for me?" Dou Xian was certain that the young man in front of him was hiding his cultivation. His real identity must be an old monster who had been hiding for a long time. Thinking of this, Dou Xian's heart became more and more respectful. His posture was extremely low. Zhuowen naturally didn't know what Dou Xian was thinking. Seeing the latter so tactfully lowering his posture, his smile became even brighter. "City Lord Dou, I have a presumptuous request. I hope City Lord Dou can help me," Zhuowen said with a smile. Dou Xian didn't even think about it. He patted his chest and said, "Senior Zhuo's matter is my matter. Senior Zhuo, you don't have to worry about me." Zhuowen smiled brightly and said, "My presumptuous request is that City Lord Dou can transfer Dubhe City to me. Of course, I won't let you suffer a loss. I will give you a satisfactory price." Chapter 21:15. 7 Profound Ganoderma. Seeing the bright smile on Zhuowen's face, Dou Xian shuddered, and a chill rose in his heart. "This, transfer Dubhe City?" Dou Xian stuttered slightly, and his face was quite ugly. He was the city lord of Dubhe City, and Zhuowen's words were a disguised way to drive him away. It was a blatant attempt to seize power. Zhuon just smiled and looked at Dou Xian silently, but the king's spirit's eyes revealed undisguised murderous intent. Dou Xian's eyes flickered, and he finally sighed and said, "Senior Zhuo, since you have taken a fancy to Dubhe City, how can I dare to take your things? This Dubhe City will be my gift to you." Zhuowen smiled faintly. He took out a jade bottle and handed it to Dou Xian. "I have never forcefully taken what others like, but I do need a stronghold. Your Dubhe City's location is pretty good, so I plan to come down. But I won't let you suffer too much. The things in these 2 bottles are enough to make up for your Dubhe City." Dou Xian was startled and subconsciously took the jade bottle, but he was a little angry. The huge Dubhe City had an immeasurable value. What precious thing could be in a mere jade bottle? How could it be compared to Dubhe City? In Dou Xian's view, Zhuowen's move was humiliating him. But he had to suppress the anger in his heart and smile. After all, the person in front of him was not a master to be trifled with. It was only a matter of minutes to kill him. However, after Dou Xian opened the bottle cork, he quickly closed it. The anger in his heart had long disappeared and was replaced by shock. Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence? And it's a whole bottle? Oh my God, am I dreaming? Dou Xian's heart pounded, and he was very excited. Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence was extremely rare even in the core star field of the Great Brahma Domain, let alone a desolate place like the land of the Far West. In Dou Xian's heart, a drop of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence was comparable to the value of Dubhe City. But now, he actually got a full bottle of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence, which was incredible. This bottle of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence had far exceeded the value of Dubhe City itself. Speaking of which, Dou Xian had taken a big bargain. Thinking up to here, Dou Xian was rather terrified. He hurriedly bowed to Zhuon and said, "Senior Zhuo, this is truly too precious." Zhuon waved his hand, but looked at Dou Xian and said with a smile, "You're also not far from breaking through to the Void Sky 7th step, right? Are you willing to join me? To tell you the truth, this bottle of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence is insignificant in my inventory. If you sincerely submit to me, it won't be difficult for you to reach the Void Sky 7th step." Dou Xian's heart jumped, but he revealed a trace of hesitation. But when he looked at the Heavenly Star Essence in his hand and the King's Spirit behind Zhuon, he gritted his teeth and said, "If Senior can really help me break through to the Void Sky 7th step, I am willing to follow Senior." Then it's settled. As the host, are you going to let us stand outside like this? Zhuon laughed heartily. Dou Xian patted his forehead and hurriedly apologized. "It's Junior's fault. Please follow me into Dubhe Pavilion." Dubhe Pavilion was the core of Dubhe City. It was also the pavilion where Dou Xian, the city lord, lived. It was heavily guarded and there were many masters inside. In Dubhe Pavilion, Yun sat in the main seat, the king's spirit sat next to him, and In Bingyun and the other 2 women sat below. Dou Xian sat on the other side with a respectful expression and a smile on his face. "Senior, Dubhe City is yours in the future. As long as you give the order, all the cultivators in Dubhe City can be used by you," Dou Xian said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded and said in a low voice, "Actually, I didn't buy your Dubhe City for the sake of controlling it, and I wanted to develop my own forces. To be honest, I have a doppelganger. He has a small world in his body. My people and force have been developing in that small world. But I don't feel at ease leaving them in the small world to develop, so I plan to bring them out. The location of your Dubhe City is not bad, so I want to settle my people and forces in your Dubhe City." Hearing this, Dou Xian showed a look of understanding. He nodded and said with a smile, "Senior Zhuo, Dubhe City is already yours. You can arrange it however you want. I will listen to all your orders," but Dou Xian's eyes became extremely hot as he said this. Zhuon smiled and said, "Don't worry, I will help you reach the 7th level of the Void Sky." As he said this, Yun took out another item from the spiritual ring. This item was a type of Ganoderma, and its surface was colorful. Moreover, there was a colorful mist lingering around the Ganoderma, giving off an intoxicating immortal qi. The moment Dou Xian saw this Ganoderma, his eyes widened. His whole body trembled, and his lips trembled. He said uncertainly, "This could be 7 profound Ganoderma?" The 7 profound Ganoderma had 7 colors. It was said that this Ganoderma was no different from an ordinary Ganoderma when it was young. But as time passed, the colors on the Ganoderma would slowly overlap, and it would eventually become a 7-colored Ganoderma. This kind of divine medicine was a level 8 divine medicine, and it was said that it could increase the chances of reaching the 7th level of the void sky from the 6th level of the void sky. As long as a cultivator had this 7 profound Ganoderma, they would be able to successfully break through the 7th level of the void sky. But as a level 8 divine medicine, the 7 profound Ganoderma was even rarer than the heavenly domain starry marrow. Zhuan had obtained this kind of divine medicine from the countless resources of the Luotian Palace. The Luotian Palace was a giant force that had produced an ultimate powerhouse who reached the 9th level of the void sky millions of years ago. It had a deep foundation, so it naturally had a certain amount of 7 profound Ganoderma. Is it enough? Zhuan asked indifferently. Dou Xian forced himself to calm down and said hastily, "Yes, it's more than enough." "Then sign a contract with me. I will help you reach the 7th level of the void sky, and you will follow me for 1,000 years. What do you think?" Zhuan smiled. Dou Xian was surprised. Then he nodded and said, "I agree." After the two of them signed the contract, Zhuan gave the 7 profound Ganoderma to Dou Xian. The latter was so happy that he carefully put the 7 profound Ganoderma away. Zhuan stayed in Dubhe City for half a month. During this time, Zhuan moved the Heavenly Armor Star and the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy out of Devourer's space. When Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu saw the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy, they were stunned at first. Then they looked grateful. They didn't expect that Zhuan would put the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy, which had become a dead area, into his small world. This made them feel touched and guilty. With the help of the King's Spirit and Dou Xian, the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy and the Heavenly Armor Star were placed around Dubhe City. Due to the Great War millions of years ago, there were almost no complete life planets in the far west, let alone galaxies. Especially in the Infinite Magnet Sea, the forces were basically built on huge meteorites. It was impossible for any planets or galaxies to exist. If the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy was taken out and placed around Dubhe City, it would attract the attention of many other forces. Especially in the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy, the area of any life planet was comparable to the meteorite where Dubhe City was located. Most of the cultivators in Dubhe City moved to the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy. After all, the meteorite where Dubhe City was located was desolate and barren. Not even a blade of grass grew there. Most of it was maintained by cultivators with their divine power. However, life planets were different. There were seas, forests, plains, hills, and many other magnificent scenes. They were extremely beautiful. This was extremely new to many cultivators in the far west. Of course, some cultivators who had been to the far west were not surprised by this. They were shocked by what kind of cultivator could move an entire galaxy and place it in the Infinite Magnet Sea. The rumor of the Void Sky 8 steps in this galaxy had also spread. Although many forces coveted the beauty of the Crepe Myrtle Galaxy, they did not dare to make a move. The 8 Void Sky steps was enough to dominate the far west. Who would dare to provoke it? Zhuan brought all the Ryuka's higher-ups to Dubhe City. The experts in Dubhe City were now under Zhuan's command. Dou Xian had already gone into seclusion and did not care about the affairs of Dubhe City at all. "Father, mother, in the future, the Long family will develop here. I believe that with the resources our Long family currently possesses, as long as we have enough time to develop, we will have more and more experts. Eventually, we will become a colossal force." Zhuan stood on the railing of the attic and looked into the distance. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao stood behind him, leaning against each other. The two of them didn't say anything, only silently looking at Zhuowen's back, the corners of their mouths filled with pride. Both of them had broken through to the Void Sky step, but their realms were not high. However, to be able to see that their son was actually so capable, their hearts were filled with gratification and joy. Which parents in the world did not want their children to succeed? The higher Zhuowen's achievements were, the prouder they would be as his parents. Ryuka has really risen. It was just an insignificant force in the heavenly armor continent. It has become so powerful and will continue to grow. It is really incredible. Long Xiaotian murmured in a low voice. His eyes were full of reminiscence. Yes, all of this cannot be separated from Wen-Er's contribution. Chapter 21:16. Old Man Heartless, King Spirit, how many 8th-step Void Sky cultivators are there in the far west? Zhuan stood with his hands behind his back, gazing into the distance as he asked. The King Spirit standing behind Zhuan replied, in the far west, there is only one other than me. Moreover, this person is eccentric and unruly. He is older and stronger than me. Who is he? Zhuan asked curiously. Originally, Yuan thought that in a desolate place like the far west, the King's Spirit would be the strongest. He didn't expect there to be an 8th-step Void Sky cultivator here. Moreover, it seemed that this 8th-step Void Sky cultivator took longer than the King's Spirit. This person is nicknamed Old Man Heartless. He is a reclusive and low-key person. In the far west, his name is not well known at all. Only those Void Sky 5th Ascension experts in the far west know of Old Wu Qing's name. Moreover, Old Man Wu Qing's cave is extremely secretive. Most of the cultivators in the far west don't know about it, and I accidentally entered his cave. At that time, I was beaten half to death by him and barely escaped. Speaking of this, the King's Spirit's mouth twitched, as if he couldn't bear to look back on the past. Zhuowen's gaze was strange as he smiled and said, so that's how it is. Old Man Heartless is not a bad person. At that time, he only taught you a lesson and didn't kill you. The King's Spirit shrugged and said helplessly, although I didn't have much contact with Old Man Heartless, I can feel that he is indeed not a bad person. May I know why Master is looking for him? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth twitched as he said indifferently, to be honest, I was driven out by many forces in the star field and ended up here in the far west. There are some old scores that I want to settle back in the star field. The King's Spirit's eyes were sharp as he asked, Master, do you plan to ask Old Man Heartless to help you? Zhuan nodded and said, from your words, I can see that Old Man Heartless is stronger than you. He should not be weaker than the ancestors of the star field's 10 great sects, perhaps even stronger. Such a character naturally needs to be invited. The King's Spirit said, Heartless Old Man doesn't leave his cave easily. If you want to convince him, the chances of success are low. If we have the blood of the heavenly Tao, will the success rate be very low? Zhuan asked with a smile. Di Ling's eyes flashed as he said, that might not be the case. Haha, take me to Old Man Wu Qing. Zhuan laughed. After receiving the King's Spirit's promise, Zhuan spoke to Long Xiaotian and the other Ryuka leaders, as well as Yin Bingyun and the other 2 girls, before leaving Dubhe City. In the deepest depths of the Myriad Magnet Sea, there was an extremely large uninhabited area. This area covered an area of 100 million kilometers. The reason it was an uninhabited area was mainly because the magnetic field here was the strongest in the entire Myriad Magnet Sea. The moment Zhuowen's flying ship entered the area, it immediately trembled violently. All the equipment in the main control room was destroyed by the powerful magnetic field, and the entire flying ship was turned into scrap metal. Zhuowen and King's Spirit walked out of the ship. What a powerful magnetic field! The moment Zhuowen walked out of the ship, he felt a terrifying magnetic force crushing his body. It made him feel as if 1,000 mountains were pressing down on him. He knew this was because the magnetic field was too strong. The magnetic field here is much stronger than before. When I first came here, the magnetic field was not this strong, King's Spirit explained. Zhuan waved his hand and asked, do you still know where Old Man Wu Qing is? King's Spirit said, yes. Master, follow me. Old Man Wu Qing's cave is not far from here. Although the magnetic field had a strong interference effect on the divine sense, neither of them were ordinary people. They could tell the direction within a short distance. Not long after, King Spirit and Zhuowen arrived at a huge canyon suspended in the middle of the magnetic field. The canyon was as dark as ink, and there was a black fog rolling around it. The fog followed a certain pattern, and it kept floating and rolling upwards, forming a hideous skull shape. It was invisible, and it exuded a strange aura. "Is this old man Wu Qing's cave?" Zhuowen asked quietly. King Spirit nodded, then looked at the entrance of the canyon and said, "This canyon is set up by old man Wu Qing. If we want to find him, we have to go through this canyon. The reason why I was able to enter back then was actually by accident. I don't know how I entered the cave." Zhuowen entered the canyon, and his eyes became very serious. He realized that the restrictions in the canyon were very mysterious. They were far beyond his array formation skills. They were much better than the Ghost Curse Lady, who had entered the Luo God Palace with him. The Ghost Curse Lady was a level 7 array formation master, and the restrictions in this canyon were at least at the level of a level 8 array formation master. "This canyon is filled with level 8 arrays," Zhuowen said solemnly. King Spirit was shocked and said helplessly, "Then what should we do?" Although King Spirit knew that Zhuowen's array formation was very powerful, he was only a level 6 array formation master. It was almost impossible for him to break through the endless level 8 array formations in the canyon. "Let's go!" Zhuowen's eyes were sharp. His divine soul was unprecedentedly powerful. Although his formation Dao was not comparable to a level 8 formation Dao master, his divine soul was not any weaker than a level 8 formation Dao master. If he was asked to set up a level 8 array formation, Zhuowen would not be able to do it. However, with his powerful spirit, Zhuowen could easily observe these level 8 spirit arrays and find the flaws in these spirit arrays and exploit them. Thinking of this, Zhuowen took a step forward and entered the canyon. There was an extremely powerful array formation at the entrance. Zhuowen scanned it with his soul, and after 10 breaths, he finally found the flaw in the array formation. Immediately after, his divine sense transformed into a violent storm and fiercely bombarded the gap, causing the array to instantly fall into a weakened state. "Let's go," Zhuowen said to the King Spirit. Then he stepped into the canyon. King Spirit was stunned at first, but he quickly reacted and followed in. The King Spirit was impressed by Zhuowen's bravery. If it were him, he would not be able to do anything about the array formation in the canyon. The canyon was not very long, only about 4,000 meters long. For elites like Zhuowen and King Spirit, it would only take them a single step to cross that distance. But now, it was difficult for them to walk in the canyon. As they entered the canyon, the array formation became denser and more powerful. The speed of their progress became slower. But Zhuowen was not discouraged. Instead, he became more and more excited. While he was breaking the array formation, he was also learning how to arrange the array formation around him. As he continued to break the array formation, Zhuowen's understanding of the array formation increased rapidly. After all, level 8 formations could be seen everywhere in the gorge. Since Zhuowen had seen a lot of level 8 formations, he naturally had a rough understanding of many level 8 formations. Moreover, he was able to figure out the principles and trajectories of level 8 formations by breaking through the formations. It could be said to be extremely beneficial to him. Inside the canyon, Zhuowen and King Spirit walked for 3 months. Finally, they reached the end of the canyon. "Finally, we are out." King Spirit breathed a sigh of relief, and a relaxed smile appeared on his face. For the past 3 months, King Spirit had been worried that Zhuowen would trigger the level 8 array formation. King Spirits were not afraid of level 8 arrays, but there was more than one level 8 array in the valley. If one of them was triggered, the entire array formation would be triggered. With so many level 8 arrays activated at the same time, even King Spirit would not be able to withstand it. However, just as the King Spirit took a step forward, it was stopped by Zhuowen. "Master, what is it?" King Spirit looked at Zhuowen with confusion. However, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with seriousness. He said in a heavy voice, "There's another formation here. If I'm not wrong, the formation at the end of the gorge is the source of all the formations in the gorge. It's also the strongest formation. If you continue on like this, I don't know what will happen." King Spirit's body trembled, and he immediately stopped. He took a few steps back, and his eyes were full of fear. King Spirit's consciousness scanned the area, but he could not find any trace of the array formation. Don't waste your time. There is a powerful shielding array outside this array formation. It has already blocked your divine sense. How can you still detect it? Zhuowen said, and then took 9 steps forward. He took out 9 palm-sized array discs from his spirit ring. Zhuowen quickly formed a seal with his hands. Then, the 9 array discs quickly assembled and arranged themselves into the shape of a tower in the void. Crick, crick. The sound of machinery rolling could be heard from the inside of the 9 array discs. Then, a few meters in front of Zhuowen, dense, invisible ripples appeared. The instant the invisible ripples surged out, a frightening gale whistled and swept out, causing Zhuowen's white robes to flutter and flutter. Zhuowen's hair flew in the wind, and he stood still like a rock. His right hand formed a sword finger and quickly moved on the 9 array discs. Then, dazzling lines appeared on the surface of the array discs, like veins, filling the surface of the array discs. King Spirit's pupils shrank, and he saw the quiet air in front of him surge violently. Immediately, the King Spirit's divine sense detected an array that was much larger than any of the other level 8 arrays in the canyon. The King Spirit licked his lips and said, "Isn't this a bit too scary? It is much stronger than a level 8 array formation. It must be at least a level 9 array formation." Chapter 21:17. Breaking the Array. Who is it? Zhuowen turned his head and saw a white-haired old man in a green robe slowly walking over from the end of the array. The old man was extremely short, only reaching Zhuowen's abdomen. He was as tall as a child. "Master, it's old man Wu Qing." The King's Spirit reminded him in a low voice. Zhuowen was startled. He looked at the dwarf old man from head to toe, but his heart was full of curiosity. Hearing this name, he should be a peerless expert with extraordinary charm and bearing. But now, the old man in front of Zhuowen looked a little too shabby. It was almost unbearable to look at him directly. Seeing Zhuowen staring at him, old man Wu Qing raised his head and said pretentiously, "Boy, are you staring at me like this because you think I'm handsome and extraordinary? Are you ashamed of your inferiority?" Zhuowen stood where he was and thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Senior, I think you have an extraordinary bearing, so I came to visit you. I just don't know if you can break this array?" Old man Wu Qing's right hand gently lifted the white hair in front of his forehead and sighed softly. "Sometimes, this old man is too eye-catching. Although it's not my fault, in order to avoid those crazy girls, this old man has lived here for a long time for peace and quiet." The corners of the King's Spirit's eyes twitched. He opened his mouth, but he still couldn't bear to tell the truth. He knew very well that when he entered the canyon and met old man Wu Qing, it was because he was too honest and told the truth that he was beaten up by old man Wu Qing. "Oh, so it's you, boy. You just left last time. Why are you here again? If you still want to slander this old man like last time, this old man will have to stretch his muscles again." Old man Wu Qing noticed the King's Spirit behind Zhuowen. He couldn't help but pinch his hands and grin, his tone full of impoliteness. The King's Spirit's body trembled. The years when he was beaten by old man Wu Qing were definitely the most miserable and painful years. Old man Wu Qing's control over his strength was extremely precise. Every single punch would not cause too much damage, but it would make one wish they were dead. Although the King's Spirit had reached Hollow Sky 8 levels, Old Man Heartless had left a shadow in his heart. Now that he saw Old Man Heartless again, he couldn't help but feel scared. He actually reached Void Sky 8 steps. The speed of improvement was really fast. "It hasn't even been that long, and you've already advanced?" Old man Wu Qing finally noticed the powerful aura of the King's Spirit. He raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, "How have you been, senior? Ever since the last time I met you, I've always thought you were a handsome man," the King's Spirit said with a flattering smile. Old man Wu Qing revealed an expression as if he had learned something. He nodded and said, "That's right. You've finally spoken the truth. If you were as honest as you were last time, you wouldn't have had to suffer." The King's Spirit forced a smile on his face, But he had nothing to say. Last time, he had spoken the truth, which was why he had been beaten to a pulp by Old Man Wuching. If the king's spirit was still so honest this time, he might have been beaten up by Old Man Wuching again. "Senior, can you undo the formation and talk further?" Zhuowen reminded again. Old Man Wuching waved his hand and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? This old man noticed you just now. Your soul is really extraordinarily powerful. If it weren't for that, it would have been really difficult for you to pass through this canyon. If you really want to talk to this old man, then how about you try walking out of this formation? After you walk out, you can slowly talk to this old man." After saying that, Old Man Wuching put his hands behind his back and left with a faint smile. Zhuowen stood in place and frowned slightly. He understood what Old Man Wuching meant. A hermit like Old Man Wuching wouldn't meet an unfamiliar cultivator for no reason unless Zhuowen proved that he was qualified to talk to Old Man Wuching. And the way to prove that was through the formation in front of him. As long as Zhuowen could break this formation, then he would be qualified to talk to Old Man Wuching in detail. Old Man Wuching left so quickly that it was as if he had disappeared. Zhuowen didn't even have time to mention the blood of heaven's path. "Master, what should we do?" the king's spirit asked. "Break the formation." Zhuowen sighed and looked at the formation in front of him. "King's spirit, wait for me outside. If I can successfully pass through this formation, I will come back and bring you out." King's spirit nodded and sat cross-legged on the ground. Although King's spirit's cultivation was very high, he knew nothing about formations. He only had brute force. If he entered the formation, not only would he not be able to help Zhuowen, but he would also be a burden to Zhuowen. Zhuowen summoned the no-beginning demonic golden sword and surrounded his body. At the same time, he held the glorious purple galaxy sword in his hand and slowly walked into the formation in front of him. The formation was extremely large, as big as a football field. At a glance, it was surrounded by a gray liquid barrier. The instant Zhuowen entered the great formation, a terrifying noise suddenly sounded in his ears. This cacophony contained the terrifying sounds of wild beasts, thunderbolts, mountain torrents, tsunamis, and other earth-shattering noises. All of them assaulted Zhuowen's eardrums, causing him to feel dizzy. Shaking his head, Zhuowen hurriedly protected his hearing and decisively sealed it off. However, the instant his hearing was sealed, he immediately smelled a nauseating stench. This stench was too pungent, causing Zhuowen's stomach to churn. He wanted nothing more than to throw his stomach out. Zhuowen decisively sealed his sense of smell, followed by his sight, touch, and even taste. The moment he entered the formation, Zhuowen could not help but seal his 5 senses. Moreover, it was not forced by the formation. Instead, it was because Zhuowen had encountered something that he hated the most with his 5 senses, so he had voluntarily sealed his 5 senses. However, when Zhuowen's 5 senses were sealed, he found that he could not release them at all. At this moment, Zhuowen became extremely calm. He knew that this was the formation's attack method. The first step was to cut off his 5 senses. "Puchi!" Zhuowen growled. Then he felt an intense pain coming from his right arm. Then, he found that his right arm could not exert any strength. To be more precise, his right arm could not feel anything. It was as if his right arm had been chopped off. Following that, Zhuowen's left arm, right foot, left foot, and even his entire body seemed to have been torn apart. The pain was so real that Zhuowen was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat. The intense pain caused panic to rise in his heart. At this moment, Zhuowen even felt that a pair of hands were wantonly stirring his abdomen. The hands were casually tearing and twisting his intestines as if they were playing with his body. Zhuowen wanted to retreat and avoid the touch of these strange hands. However, he found that he could no longer move his limbs. To be more precise, his limbs had been completely cut off, and he had no medium to grab at all. At that moment, Zhuowen could clearly feel the pair of hands that had sunk deep into his abdomen slowly move up and across his chest. Then, he could clearly feel the pair of hands pulling open his chest completely, revealing his heart inside. The intense pain stimulated Zhuowen so much that he almost vomited. He really wanted to see who was treating him so cruelly. However, he struggled hard and found that he had completely lost his vision. He couldn't see what was happening in front of him at all. Zhuan wanted to speak with difficulty, but found that he couldn't open his mouth at all. He couldn't make any sound. The hands seemed to be tired of playing with Zhuan's chest and then set their target on Zhuan's head. Zhuan felt a pair of sharp nails stop at the center of his eyebrows. Then, they slowly pierced into the deepest part of his forehead. Puchi! Suddenly, blood spurted out. Then, the sharp nails pierced into the deepest part of his forehead. Then, they wantonly stirred, causing blood to spurt out. Zhuan almost fainted from the pain, but the hateful nails wantonly stirred his forehead, causing him to be abnormally clear-headed. This abuse lasted for half an hour. Then, the nails fiercely opened Zhuan's forehead. Then, Zhuan completely lost consciousness. When Zhuan opened his eyes with difficulty, he subconsciously sat up. He looked around and found that he was still in the Great Array. Zhuan looked at his body again and found that he was safe and sound. Taking a deep breath, Zhuan's eyes shone brightly. He said in a deep voice, "What a realistic illusion. That pain almost penetrated into my bones." While Zhuan was speaking, the unbearable noise came to Zhuan's ears again. However, Zhuan resisted and didn't take the initiative to seal his hearing. He knew very well that once he sealed his hearing, it would be the same as before. Gradually, his 5 senses would be sealed and he would fall into an even more terrifying illusion. Zhuan sat cross-legged on the spot and took a deep breath. The more than 3,000 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space began to operate at the same time. The extremely terrifying divine sense swept up around Zhuan like a hurricane, causing Zhuan's sleeves to flutter. "I must find the flaw in this great array." Zhuan's eyes showed a determined look. At the same time, he began to learn the specific patterns and operating trajectories of this great array. After this trip to the canyon, Zhuan had studied many level 8 great arrays. His understanding of array Dao had deepened, and his array Dao level was approaching the edge of level 7. Zhuan believed that it wouldn't be long before his array Dao level could completely advance to level 7. If he could advance to level 7, then his divine sense would become even sharper and more powerful. By then, it would be more than enough to find the flaw in this level 8 great array. Chapter 21:18. Chilly time gradually passed. Zhuan sat in the array without moving. His powerful spiritual sense spread out like a curtain of rain, searching for the various flaws in the array. This spirit array was much stronger than an ordinary grade 8 spirit array. It was airtight, and no matter how Zhuan used his divine sense to scan it, he could not find any flaws in the spirit array. However, Zhuan wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he scanned the grand formation over and over again. With his powerful divine sense, he observed the veins and circulation paths of the entire grand formation, silently verifying his own level and ceaselessly learning and comprehending. Zhuan could clearly feel that he was not far from becoming a level 7 formation Dao master. Especially after comprehending all the level 8 arrays in the canyon, his perception had increased to an unimaginable level. He could feel that he was only a thin layer away from becoming a level 7 formation Dao master. As long as Zhuan pierced through this thin layer, he would be able to become a level 7 formation Dao master. 1 month, 2 months. Up until the 8th month, Zhuan practically sat cross-legged within the grand formation, breathing and exhaling while his divine sense swept through everything within the grand formation at all times. Suddenly, Zhuan slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were bursting with a radiance that was difficult to look at. Rumble! Zhuan stood up with a swoosh. From the depths of his eyebrows, a terrifying aura erupted like a volcano. This aura was continuous and endless. It was like a tsunami, rolling over. Moreover, this aura was not material. It was purely the powerful fluctuation of his consciousness. There was no doubt that Zhuan's consciousness had reached an unprecedented level of strength. "I have finally reached the level of a level 7 formation Dao master." Zhuan's eyes were bursting with divine light. The corners of his mouth curved into a joyful arc. Although a level 7 formation Dao master was not that great, Zhuan was different. His consciousness was very powerful. Although he was only a level 7 formation Dao master with his powerful consciousness, He was far more powerful than an ordinary level 7 formation Dao master. He was infinitely close to becoming a level 8 formation Dao master. Let's see if we can find a flaw in this formation. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. His soul consciousness, which was as terrifying as a hurricane, instantly swept out and covered the surroundings of the grand formation. At the same time, Zhuowen was constantly calculating and comparing the differences between the large arrays in his heart, looking for the similarities between them. He deduced for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, on the 3rd day, he slowly opened his eyes. His feet moved in a mysterious manner as he slowly walked forward. Finally, he stopped at the end of the array. Zhuowen's right hand formed a finger sword and pressed against the edge of the array. The moment he touched the array, Zhuowen's finger sword changed rapidly. Rumble. Muffled thunderous sounds rang out continuously, and then the entire formation began to tremble violently. The originally illusory formation had actually materialized. Terrifying cracks had appeared on its surface, as if it would shatter at any moment. The formation trembled more and more violently, so much so that the entire canyon shook violently. Countless cracks appeared on both sides of the canyon, and countless rocks fell down. Outside the formation, the king's spirit's eyes were solemn. He could not help but take a few steps back and murmured in a low voice, "It's been more than 8 months. Finally, there's something. I wonder if Master can break this formation?" In front of the exit of the canyon, a short old man slowly appeared. He squinted his eyes and stared at the young man who was constantly deducing and breaking the formation. He nodded slightly and said, "What an extraordinary boy. His divine soul is so powerful, and his comprehension is also very high." This person was none other than the master of the canyon, Old Man Wuqing. Old Man Wuqing's withered right hand suddenly clenched the void. The powerful formation that was originally enveloping Zhuowen instantly disappeared. Zhuowen, who was originally breaking the formation, was puzzled. He slowly walked out and saw Old Man Wuqing standing on a huge rock in front of him. "Master, you broke it?" The king's spirit rushed behind Zhuowen and asked in surprise. This formation was very powerful, and the king's spirit could feel it. Although he knew that Zhuowen was not simple, he did not expect Zhuowen to break it so quickly. "I'm still a distance away from breaking the formation. It was Senior Wuqing who broke the formation." Zhuowen shook his head. Old Man Wuqing put his hands behind his back and grinned. "Young man, you're quite humble. If I let you stay any longer, this formation will definitely break." Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "The result now is that this formation was not broken by me, but was saved by Senior, isn't that right?" Old Man Wuqing laughed and said, "Not bad, not bad. You're quite good with words. Come in." As he spoke, Old Man Wuqing stooped and slowly walked into the depths of the canyon. Zhuowen and the king's spirit looked at each other and followed closely behind. Behind the huge rock where Old Man Wuqing was standing was a winding path. It twisted and turned like a snake. Green bamboo grew on both sides of the path, and it looked very tall and straight. After walking for about half an hour, Nguyen found that at the end of the path was a very quiet valley. There was a giant waterfall and a small pool near the edge of the valley. Other than that, there was a small bamboo house. In front of the house, there was a stone table and 3 stone stools. Old Man Wuqing sat on one of the stools. He looked at Zhuowen and the king's spirit and gestured for them to sit. After Zhuowen and the king's spirit sat down, Old Man Wuqing poured a cup of tea. He took a sip and said, "If you want to drink tea, go ahead. I don't have the habit of serving others." Zhuowen smiled faintly, but he was not angered by Old Wuqing's arrogant attitude at all. "Kid, you're not easy. You were beaten up by me last time, but you're still conscious. You remember the location of my cave." Old Man Emotionless took another sip of tea and spoke to King's spirit coldly. The king's spirit nodded and smiled. "Because I admire you so much, I have to remember the location of your cave. Why don't you show it to me now?" Old Man Wuqing said nonchalantly. The king's spirit's mouth was stiff, but he did not say anything. Although the king's spirit had reached virtual sky 8 levels, if they fought, Old Man Wuqing would not be able to kill him. However, The king's spirit had been beaten up too badly by old man Wu Qing. He was scared, and there was a shadow in his heart. Now that he saw old man Wu Qing, the king's spirit felt inferior. He did not dare speak too loudly. "Senior, we're actually here to make a deal with you." At that moment, Zhuan spoke. Old man Wu Qing looked at Zhuan. Zhuan's power was not strong. He was only virtual sky 4 levels. In old man Wu Qing's eyes, such a cultivation was no different from an ant. However, old man Wu Qing did not underestimate this child. Not to mention that the king's spirit had recognized this person as his master, this child had almost broken the formation he was proud of. He knew that this child was not simple. A deal? What kind of deal? Old man Wu Qing's tone was perfunctory. He had lived in seclusion here for countless years, and he had long lost his ambition. If there was anything, it was that he had an indescribable fanatical pursuit of the virtual Sky 9 levels. However, the virtual Sky 9 levels was not something that could be broken through just because one wanted to. One needed talent, opportunity, and luck. Old man Wu Qing was already at the peak of virtual Sky 8 levels. To put it nicely, he was only half a step away from virtual Sky 9 levels. However, old man Wu Qing knew that this half a step was like the distance between heaven and earth. As for other things, old man Wu Qing was not tempted. "Blood of the heavenly path," Zhuan said slowly. Old man Wu Qing's eyes slowly widened. He stared at Zhuan and said as if he was in a dream, "What did you say? Say it again." The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled up slightly. He then stood up and glanced at the king's spirit. The latter nodded, and the two of them actually walked out of the valley as if they were going to leave. Old man Wu Qing's breathing quickened. He hurriedly chased after them and stopped in front of Zhuan. He asked in a deep voice, "Is the blood of the heavenly path that you mentioned formed from the rules of the heavenly path?" "Senior, what do you think?" Zhuan asked meaningfully. Old man Wu Qing nodded. He gestured with his right hand and said, "Little brother, I was a little negligent just now. Please sit." Zhuan nodded slightly. Then he swaggered onto the stone platform and sat down. Old man Wu Qing asked impatiently, "You plan to trade the blood of the heavenly path to me? If you really have it, I definitely won't let you suffer a loss." Zhuan still shook his head. Old man Wu Qing's face darkened and he said, "Are you going back on your word?" Zhuan smiled faintly and said, "I do have the blood of the heavenly path, but I don't plan to trade it to you. Instead, I can give you 10 days to comprehend it." Old man Wu Qing frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "Only 10 days? What's your condition? How about you come out and kill someone for me?" Zhuan said. Old man Wu Qing's eyes flickered, but he shook his head and said, "10 days is too short." The corners of Zhuan's mouth revealed a sly smile as he said, "How about this? You'll protect me for however many days you comprehend. How about that? You want me to be your fighter?" Chapter 21:19. This is the way of heaven. Senior, I don't want you to be my fighter. I want you to protect me. I don't want to restrict your freedom, Zhuan said with a smile. Old man Wu Qing's eyes became sharper. He stared at the young man in front of him coldly and released an unprecedented murderous intent. The king's spirit's eyes trembled, but he reacted immediately. He released his 8-level void sky aura without holding back and stood in front of Zhuan. "Senior, why are you so impulsive?" Zhuan took a sip of tea and said slowly. Old man Wu Qing's gaze became even sharper. He said coldly, "You sure are bold. Now that you're acting so arrogantly in my territory, aren't you afraid that I'll kill you and take your heavenly way blood?" Zhuan was not moved. He said, "Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Since I came here today, I am confident. Do you think I will bring something as important as the blood of heaven with me when I enter your territory?" Old man Wu Qing frowned, and his murderous intent became stronger. The king's spirit in front of Zhuan did not dare relax, but his heart trembled. They were both 8-level void sky elites, but the king's spirit was not confident that he could defeat old man Wu Qing. Old man Wu Qing suddenly laughed, and his murderous intent disappeared. He looked at Zhuan and said, "Your cultivation is not high, but your courage is not small. Senior, What do you mean? Juan narrowed his eyes and asked knowingly. You win, and I agree to your conditions. However, I want to make it clear that I will only protect you. Don't think you can order me around, Old Man Wu Qing said again. Zhuowen smiled and said, Of course. Old Man Wu Qing waved his sleeve, and the huge waterfall beside the small bamboo house suddenly stopped flowing. The entire waterfall began to spin clockwise, and it spun faster and faster. Finally, in the middle of the waterfall, a black hole appeared. It was bottomless. However, you need to show some sincerity, kid. Go out and bring me the heavenly Tao blood. Only then will I feel more at ease, Old Man Wu Qing said coolly. Zhuan nodded and said, Of course. But before that, shouldn't Senior establish a contract with me? If anyone violates the contract, they will suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. Old Man Wu Qing's gaze turned cold. It wasn't that he hadn't made a contract before, but most of the time, he had made a contract while facing the starry skies rules. As for the heavenly Tao laws, he had never made a contract. After all, the heavenly Tao was a power of a higher level. If he suffered a backlash from the heavenly Tao laws, even Elder Heartless would have the risk of dying. It could be said that once this kind of contract was established, the degree of trust would be the highest. Of course, if someone went back on their word, the punishment would also be the most severe. What? Does Senior feel that this contract is inappropriate? Zhuan asked solemnly. Old Man Wu Qing shrugged and said, I don't think it's inappropriate. I just feel surprised. After he finished speaking, Old Wu Qing slashed with his right hand, and a line of blood appeared on his left thumb. Fresh blood spilled out and gathered to form a blood-colored picture. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that this blood-colored picture was a blood-colored six-pointed star array. Zhuan followed suit and also used his own blood as a guide to draw the same blood-colored six-pointed star array. The two blood-colored six-pointed star arrays began to intersect and overlap with each other. Finally, they burst out with an unprecedentedly terrifying blood-colored light that filled the entire sky. At the end of the starry sky, an invisible and formless hand stretched out. This hand was clearly invisible and formless, but the three people present could clearly feel that this was a big hand that made their hearts tremble. The moment this big hand pinched the two blood-colored six-pointed star arrays, Zhuan and Elder Heartless could clearly feel that their hearts were firmly pinched by this big hand. As long as this big hand was slightly stronger, it could completely crush their hearts. This is the power of the heavenly Tao? Zhuan narrowed his eyes, but fear rose in his heart. After the big hand formed by the heavenly Tao pinched the six-pointed star array, it slowly disappeared into the starry sky. That's right. Heavenly Tao, oh heavenly Tao, this is the only power that surpasses the starry sky. Whoever can completely grasp the power of the heavenly Tao will be the king of this starry sky. A complicated look appeared in Elder Heartless' eyes as he muttered in a low voice, his tone filled with yearning. A cultivator who ascends 9 times in the void can completely grasp the heavenly Tao, right? Zhuan asked doubtfully. Elder Heartless sneered, 9 times in the void? You're thinking too much. 9 times in the void is still far from it. To me, 9 times in the void is just a superficial understanding of the power of the heavenly Tao. Those who can truly grasp the heavenly Tao are legendary experts who have broken through the heavens. However, those experts are too far away from us. There are countless geniuses in the 8 heavens, but how many cultivators can reach 9 times in the void? And the lords of the heavens whose strength surpasses ordinary 9 times in the void do not understand the true heavenly Tao at all. The true heavenly Tao is actually only understood by the legendary experts who have broken through the heavens. Only the experts who have broken through the heavens can truly break through this shackle-like starry sky. Zhuan silently listened to Elder Heartless' rueful words, but his heart sank into silence. The heavenly Tao was a power that Zhuan had only come into contact with recently. If he had not obtained the blood of the heavenly Tao, he would not even know what the heavenly Tao was. Of course, even if he knew the existence of the heavenly Tao now, he still did not know what the heavenly Tao was. Breaking through the heavens? Zhuan also murmured in a low voice. He was also filled with yearning for that legendary cultivation level. Alright, the Heavenly Tao contract has been set. You can go and bring the blood of the Heavenly Tao for me to see. If you don't have the blood of the Heavenly Tao, then it'll be considered as you breaking the contract. At that time, the hand of the Heavenly Tao will tear you to pieces, Elder Heartless said calmly. Zhuan nodded and sent the black-robed Zhuoan into the black hole. After about half a day, the black-robed Zhuoan returned. He held an unremarkable white jade box in his hand. Zhuan threw the white jade box to old man Wu Qing and said, "This is the blood of Heavenly Tao. Take a look for yourself." Old man Wu Qing received the heavenly blood and opened it. Immediately, an aura as vast as the ocean surged out, firmly suppressing old man Wu Qing. Old man Wu Qing's eyes shone brightly as he curled his lips. It really is the blood of the Heavenly Tao. Moreover, if I'm not wrong, this is Luotian's blood of the Heavenly Tao. Hun nodded noncommittally and said, "I got the heavenly blood from the waxing, and waning moons. According to the agreement, you can only refer to the heavenly blood's texture rules and have no right to use it." Old man Wu Qing waved his hand and said somewhat impatiently, "Don't worry. Since we've already established a Heavenly Tao contract, I have no intention of going back on my word." After saying that, old man Wu Qing took the white jade box and entered the small bamboo house. When he closed the small bamboo house, old man Wu Qing said, "Don't disturb me if there's nothing important. Wait for me to comprehend the heavenly blood. When I'm satisfied, I'll come out of seclusion. Also, I see that your talent in array Tao is not bad. There's a cave in the waterfall, and there are many array patterns carved on the cave walls. Those things are useful to you. In short, don't bother me if there's nothing important." After saying that, old man Wu Qing fiercely closed the door of the small bamboo house. After Zhuo Wen's divine sense silently probed the small and ordinary bamboo house, he was shocked to discover that the surface of the small bamboo house was covered in numerous obscure spirit formations, and these spirit formations were much more formidable than the grand formations he'd encountered in the gorge when he first entered. Zhuo knew that even if old man Wu Qing was not a level 9 divine array master, he was probably not far away. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes became more and more excited. He immediately said something to the king's spirit, and the two of them arrived in front of the waterfall. "Master, are you so assured that old man Wu Qing will take the heavenly blood? If he secretly uses it and advances to the void sky 9 steps, I'm afraid he won't be afraid of the Heavenly Tao, right?" The King's Spirit asked worriedly. Hun shook his head and said, "King's Spirit, the terror of the Heavenly Tao is beyond our imagination. That old man Wu Qing won't break the contract so easily." Zhuan couldn't help but think of the fear in old man Wu Qing's eyes when the Heavenly Tao hand appeared. Although he didn't know much about the Heavenly Tao, he knew that old man Wu Qing's expression wouldn't be fake. Without a doubt, old man Wu Qing was really afraid of the Heavenly Tao. That was why Zhuan was so assured to give the Heavenly Tao blood to old man Wu Qing. The King's Spirit nodded silently and didn't say anything else. "Wait for me outside. I'll go inside the waterfall and take a look." Zhuo instructed as he leaped into the waterfall. The moment he entered the waterfall, Zhuan immediately found a deep cave. After stepping into the cave, Zhuan took out a luminous stone from his spirit ring. An oily green light spread out, illuminating the cave. Zhuan casually looked at the rock wall beside him, and his gaze immediately became serious. He saw that there was indeed a rather complicated array drawn on the rock wall. Below the array pattern, there were densely packed small words. They were actually introducing the names and principles of these arrays, and they were extremely detailed. Zhuan slowly went deeper and found that the rock walls along the way were actually filled with similar arrays. The deeper he went, the more complicated the arrays were, and they all had corresponding introductions. Chapter 2120. Nirvana Rebirth. At the end of the cave, there was an open space that was neither big nor small. In the middle of the open space stood a stone tablet. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the stone tablet, and his expression was filled with shock. There was also a formation inscribed on the surface of the stone tablet. However, the complexity of this formation far exceeded the scope of Zhuo Wen's understanding. Zhuan had seen many formations along the way in the cave, and there were even many level 8 formations carved on the walls. However, none of them could compare to the terrifying formation carved on the stone tablet in front of him. A level 9 formation. Zhuan's gaze became extremely solemn. It was not that he had never seen level 8 formations before. Even if it was a top-notch level 8 formation, although he might not be able to break it, he could at least understand it. However, he could not understand the formation carved on the stone tablet in front of him at all. Apart from the level 9 formation, Yuan could not think of any other formation that was so terrifying. I really didn't expect that there would be a stone tablet with a level 9 formation carved on it. It's really unbelievable. Zhuan's eyes were filled with excitement. At the same time, he also knew why old Wuqing's formation skills were so terrifying. It should be because of this stone tablet in the cave. To be able to refer to the principles of level 9 formations was such a blessing and important thing for a formation godmaster. As long as one's comprehension was not too bad, through the imitation and learning of level 9 formations, the standard of a formation godmaster would not be too bad. Zhuan suppressed the excitement in his heart. He did not immediately comprehend the level 9 formation on the stone tablet. Instead, he returned to the entrance of the cave. He planned to start from the first formation diagram on the wall of the cave entrance. He vaguely felt that the formation on the stone tablet had an unusual connection with the other formations in the cave. If he were to immediately study the array on the stone tablet, he was afraid that he would be at a loss. However, if he were to study the basic array diagrams on the rock wall, he might be able to find some kind of pattern from the simple to the complicated. Of course, if Zhuan wanted to immediately comprehend the level 9 array on the stone tablet, he could do so deliberately. However, Zhuan knew that he might not be able to understand the level 9 array even if he took the time to study it. If you can't even understand it, how can you talk about research? Thus, Zhuan began to slowly study the array diagram from the entrance of the cave. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. Zhuan had been studying the array diagrams in the cave. At the same time, he was constantly deducing and comparing them. His level of array Dao had also improved imperceptibly. On this day, Yuan stood in front of the stone tablet at the end of the cave. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he muttered softly, "After 5 years, I've finally thoroughly studied all the diagrams on the walls of the cave." Zhuan's eyes were full of confidence. He said in a low voice, "I guessed right. The level 9 grand formation on this stone tablet is more or less related to the many formations on the rock wall." After studying the complicated formations on the rock wall for 5 years, Zhuan already knew those formations like the back of his hand. Now that he had come to this place again, his gaze landed on the level 9 great array on the stone tablet. He discovered that the great array on the stone tablet did not give him the same cryptic feeling that he had at the beginning. Instead, it gave him a familiar feeling. Zhuan knew that this was the result of his level of array Dao improving imperceptibly. Of course, apart from this, he also discovered that the level 9 grand formation was actually inseparably related to the complicated diagrams on the rock wall. In other words, the formations on the diagrams were actually a part of the level 9 grand formation. It was just that someone had separated it into individual formations. Zhuan knew that the person who could separate the level 9 grand formation into independent formations was probably not the master who drew the level 9 grand formation on the stone tablet, but old Wuqing who was comprehending the level 9 grand formation. No wonder old Wuqing wanted me to enter here. It seems like he wanted me to comprehend these formations and gain more inspiration from them. Zhuan lowered his head and muttered to himself. His eyes revealed a hint of understanding. Zhuan suddenly frowned slightly. Soon after, he revealed an expression of wild joy and his breathing became much more hurried. "Chen Shui," Zhuan muttered in a low voice before taking out a crystal coffin from his spirit ring. Inside the crystal coffin, there was a beautiful woman quietly lying there. This woman was Mu Chenxue. At this moment, the sun and moon grass on Mu Chenxue's chest emitted a gentle white light. Then, the white light entered Mu Chenxue's body. The white light faded and the sun and moon grass gradually withered, finally withering completely. At the same time, Mu Chenshue's delicate body, who was lying in the crystal coffin, began to emit a blazing white light. Moreover, this white light became more and more dazzling. Within this white light, there was a burning flame. Zhuan looked at this white light and his eyes revealed a terrifying glow. He muttered in a low voice, "Phoenix body, Nirvana rebirth?" Back then, Mu Chenshue had the Phoenix bloodline. The most important talent of the Phoenix was Nirvana rebirth. It was said that after the Phoenix Nirvana rebirth, it would be reborn and reach a higher realm. When Mu Chenshue fell into a deep sleep, she was in the pilgrimage realm. Now that Mu Chenshue had Nirvana rebirth, her realm would take a large step forward. Kacha! Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the crystal coffin. In the end, because it could not withstand the terrifying flames inside the coffin, it collapsed into countless pieces. The surging flames transformed into a giant phoenix phantom. Then, it carried Mu Chenshue and rushed out of the cave. It flew out of the waterfall and floated above the valley. The king's spirit slowly raised his head and looked at the phoenix phantom that had suddenly appeared with a confused gaze. Although the phoenix phantom looked powerful, to the king's spirit, it was pitifully weak. The king's spirit only needed to wave his hand to crush it. "Master!" Not long after the phoenix phantom appeared, the emperor's spirit noticed Zhuo Wen, who was following closely behind, and bowed respectfully. Zhuo Wen nodded. Soon after, he landed not far away from the phoenix silhouette. His gaze was gentle as he looked at the stunning woman wrapped in phoenix flames. The Phoenix Nirvana rebirth needs the most energy. The stronger the energy, the stronger your little girlfriend will be after her Nirvana rebirth. The thunder fire sword flew out of the ring. Blackie sat on the hilt of the sword, looking lazy. Xiao Hei had taken a lot of resources from the Luo God Palace. Her strength was not any weaker than Zhuowen's. There was also Xiao Hei's henchman, the Blood Immortal. She had also taken advantage of Xiao Hei and her strength had increased a lot. Your little girlfriend has been asleep for too long. Her strength is really weak. She can use the Nirvana rebirth to increase her strength in a short period of time. You have a lot of resources on you, so don't be stingy, Xiao Hei teased. Of course not. Zhuowen's lips curled up. He immediately flew not far away from the Phoenix Phantom. At this moment, the Phoenix Phantom continued to cry. Its voice was filled with excitement. Mu Chenshue, who was inside, still had her eyes closed. However, Yun could clearly feel that Mu Chenshue's life force was growing stronger and stronger. "Chenshue," Zhuowen called out softly. From the spirit ring, he poured out piles of resources. However, Yun did not pour all the resources in at once. Instead, he put the resources into the phoenix flames step by step. When the resources were used up, he put in the next wave of resources. The Phoenix Phantom was still too weak. On the other hand, most of the resources on Zhuowen's body were of the highest quality and high level. There were even some herbs that had an aura that was stronger than the Phoenix Phantom. If he poured all the resources in, he would not be saving Mu Chenshue. Instead, he would be harming Mu Chenshue. At that time, the Phoenix Phantom would be crushed by the resources before it could be reborn. In the beginning, Zhuowen had put in the lowest grade of divine medicine and resources. The Phoenix Phantom had barely absorbed them. If it weren't for Zhuowen's help, the Phoenix Phantom would have had a hard time absorbing them all. However, after absorbing the lowest level of divine medicine, the Phoenix Phantom began to emit even more intense flames. Even the aura of the Phoenix Phantom had become much stronger. At this moment, the door of the small bamboo house was slowly opened. Old man Wuching walked out while cursing, "Which bird is it? Why are you so noisy so early in the morning? Do you believe that I won't stew you to nourish my body?" Old man Wuching noticed the Phoenix Phantom in the sky and his eyes became even more furious. However, when he saw Zhuowen carefully throw the divine herbs into the Phoenix Phantom, he calmed down. "So it's a little girl. This little girl's realm is too low. Moreover, she seems to have the Phoenix bloodline? However, this kind of low-level origin beast can't even compare to the lowest-level giant star beast. This Nirvana rebirth is very interesting." Old man Wuching had his hands behind his back as his eyes revealed a look of interest. He didn't like the Phoenix bloodline and he didn't like Mu Chenxue even more. He wanted to see how many resources Zhuowen would spend on this girl. In Old man Wuching's opinion, this girl would be reborn after Nirvana rebirth. The quality of her foundation and aptitude would depend on the process of Nirvana rebirth. Of course, Old man Wuching felt that wasting too many good resources on a woman was a very foolish action. Therefore, when he saw Zhuowen take out some low-level divine herbs, he felt that it was very normal. This kid even took out a level 3 divine herb? Isn't it a bit wasteful to use it on this little girl? Old man Wuching suddenly exclaimed softly. His gaze landed on Zhuowen's hand. He was holding a 7-colored grass in his palm. The 7 colors were constantly alternating, looking gorgeous and dazzling. Chapter 21-21. Awakening as time continued to pass, Old man Wuching was shocked to discover that Zhuowen was actually taking out even more precious divine medicines. Level 4, Level 5, and even Level 6 divine medicines, all of which he threw into the Phoenix Phantom. Is this kid crazy? He's throwing Level 6 divine herbs in just like that? Old man Wuching felt his heart ache. Although he also had Level 6 divine herbs, Zhuowen had not taken out one. He had taken out dozens or even nearly 100 of them. That was a lot more than he had. Although Old man Wuching's cultivation was very high and he was quite rich, he was still much weaker than the Luotian Palace. If he were to take out so many Level 6 divine herbs, he could grit his teeth and take them out. However, if he were to take them out to help a woman increase her cultivation, he wouldn't do so. Even if this woman was Old man Wuching's closest lover, Old man Wuching wouldn't do so because he felt that it was too stupid. However, Zhuowen was different. Mu Chenxue was his wife and the person he loved the most. Moreover, Mu Chenxue's coma had a lot to do with Zhuowen. Even if Zhuowen risked his life, he would save Mu Chenxue and raise Mu Chenxue's cultivation at all costs. Nirvana rebirth was the most important moment for Mu Chenxue to obtain a new life. Zhuowen would naturally do his best to make the reborn Mu Chenxue even more perfect and powerful. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a determined look. He immediately took out more than 10 crystal-clear divine herbs from his spirit ring. Fuck, isn't this a level 7 divine herb? This kid is really crazy. He put more than 10 level 7 divine herbs in. Old man Wuching didn't know what to say. He only felt a faint pain in his heart. It was as if the dozen or so level 7 divine herbs were his, but he saw the level 7 divine herbs that belonged to him being eaten by a dog. His current mood was more or less like this. Just as Old man Wuching was about to scold Zhuowen for being a spendthrift, Zhuowen took out another 10 stalks of godly medicine. The medicinal effects of these 10 stalks of divine medicine were truly too dense. They actually transformed into countless grand scenes in the sky. There were innumerable bejeweled palaces and jade palaces. Old man Wuching's face was flushed red, but he couldn't say anything. Or rather, he didn't know what to say now. The 10 stalks of divine medicine that Zhuowen had taken out were not level 7 divine medicine, but the higher level 8 divine medicine. This had truly shocked the old man Wuching. This brat is really ruthless. He even took out level 8 divine herbs, and 10 of them at once. This courage. After saying that, the pain on old man Wuching's face deepened. He continued, level 9 divine medicine is extremely precious. This kid probably doesn't have it. Even if he did, he probably wouldn't be willing to take it out. Unfortunately, just as old man Wuching finished speaking, Zhuowen's next move slapped him hard in the face. Zhuowen carefully took out a glowing flower from his spirit ring. The petals of this flower were completely composed of halos. It looked dreamy and dazzling. Level 9 divine medicine, aurora flower? Not far away, the king's spirit's lips moved as he spat out these few words with difficulty. Then he was completely stunned. Old man Wuching sucked in a breath of cold air. His gaze became numb. Although he really wanted to scold Zhuowen, he realized that he couldn't. After all, these divine medicines weren't his own. They were Zhuowen's. He really didn't have the right to say anything. The instant the aurora flower was thrown into the Phoenix Phantom by Zhuowen, The flames within the phoenix phantom suddenly erupted and soared into the sky, dyeing the entire valley's horizon a fiery red. It looked strange and gorgeous. Moreover, these flames burned more and more fiercely, as if they were going to burn the entire sky into nothingness. The terrifying high temperature actually caused the surrounding starry sky to distort. It looked extremely terrifying. Nirvana rebirth can reach such power. I've never seen it before. Old man Wuching muttered in a low voice. However, when he thought about how Zhuowen had directly put in the level 9 divine medicine, he felt relieved. However, he wanted to curse even more. The resources that Zhuowen had thrown into the phoenix shadow were equivalent to 2/3 of old man Wuching's foundation. It was too terrifying. A loud phoenix cry was heard. It pierced through gold and stone, pierced through the starry sky, distorted space, and shattered heaven and earth. A majestic aura swept out in all directions like a storm. Zhuowen's pupils constricted. Then, he was involuntarily pushed back thousands of meters by this powerful aura. His gaze was extremely solemn as he looked at Mu Chenxue, who was in the sky-burning flames. The flames around Mu Chenxue gradually transformed from fiery red to golden yellow. Finally, they completely transformed into a golden color. They looked noble and extraordinary. Soon after, the golden flames that enveloped Mu Chenxue absorbed all the surrounding flames and turned into a gigantic fire phoenix that covered the sky as it soared into the sky. The giant phoenix continued to circle in the sky. Then, it slowly entered Mu Chenxue's body. The instant the entire fire phoenix entered Mu Chenxue's body, a golden fire phoenix mark appeared between her snow-white brows. "Chenxue!" Zhuowen shouted out. His voice was filled with excitement and anticipation. Perhaps it was because she heard Zhuowen's voice, but the beautiful woman floating in the sky slowly moved her eyelids. It was as if she was struggling to open her eyelids. Mu Chenxue slowly fell down. Zhuowen took a step forward and reached out his right hand to grab her waist. He leaned against her ear and kept calling out Mu Chenxue's name, like the whispers between lovers. Xiao He, who was sitting on the thunder flame sword's hilt, had a sad look in his eyes. The others did not know about the matter between Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue. Only he knew about it clearly. The scene of the past, when he saw Zhuowen holding Mu Chenxue, kept replaying in Xiao He's mind. It's hard for men and women to be close friends. I hope all the lovers in the world can be together. Xiao He could not help but sigh softly. There was a trace of sadness and melancholy in his heart. Sir is so refined. This poem is so well written. This little one cannot help but cry. The blood immortal sword was floating not far away from Xiao He. She was wiping her tears while praising Xiao He. Scram to the side. Father is not in the mood to listen to your flattery today. Xiao He sent the blood immortal flying with a kick. His eyes were filled with melancholy as he looked at the young couple who had finally reunited. As Zhuowen kept calling out in a low voice, Mu Chenxue's eyelids kept twitching. Her beautiful eyelashes kept moving up and down, giving off a kind of charming charm. Finally, Mu Chenxue's eyelids stopped twitching. She slowly opened her eyes, and what entered her eyes was a familiar face. Zhuo. What? Mu Chenxue's delicate body trembled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with mist. She raised her jade-like hands and held Zhuowen's face. She said in a soft voice, "It's really you. I thought I would never see you again. Now that I've seen you, am I dreaming?" Zhuowen held Mu Chenxue and landed on top of the waterfall. His lips revealed a bright smile, but his eyes were filled with tears. "Chenxue, you're not dreaming, everything is real. You're real and I'm real. Everything around us is real. You've already woken up, I won't let you leave me again." Zhuowen was filled with tears of joy. His words were incoherent and he even stuttered a bit. Mu Chenxue looked around. After confirming that everything was real, she hugged Zhuowen and said with a smile, "It's not a dream, it's really not a dream. You've appeared in front of me again." The two of them hugged each other for a long time, as if they wanted to fuse into each other's bodies. This is too moving. The lovers are finally together. I'm so moved. Sir, don't hit me. I'm really moved. I'm not flattering you, I'm just expressing my true feelings. It hurts. Sir, I'm not flattering you. The blood immortal who had been sent flying by Xiao Hei's kick once again arrived near Xiao Hei. She was filled with tears and snot as she spoke. It was a pity that all she got was a beating from Xiao Hei. What followed was the blood immortal's pitiful cries that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. How boring! 9th level divine medicine, so many precious divine medicines. Wasting them on a woman like this, it's not worth it at all. Old man Wu Qing curled his lips. He sat down on the stone bench in front of the little bamboo house and poured a pot of tea. His lips were filled with disdain. The king's spirit stood on the side with a strange look in his eyes. He really did not know about Mu Qinshue's existence at all. Zhuan had never even mentioned her before. However, this was Zhuowen's private matter. The king's spirit was just Zhuowen's servant. He had no right to ask about Zhuowen's private matters. This little girl is quite lucky. She just happened to be reborn at the same time as Zhuowen. With so many level 9 divine medicines and so many divine medicines, this little girl's cultivation has transformed really quickly. She actually reached 1-step virtual sky. Sitting on the thunder fire sword, Blackie clicked his tongue in wonder and continued, "Moreover, with the Nirvana rebirth, this little girl's talent is even stronger than before. As long as there are enough resources, it shouldn't be difficult for her to catch up to Zhuowen." Chapter 21-22. The 4 Great Islands. Zhuan and Mu Qinshui cuddled for a while before pulling Mu Qinshui into the valley. He smiled as he introduced the Emperor's spirit and Old Man Wuqing to her. Mu Qinshui was especially shocked when she heard that Old Man Wuqing and the Emperor's spirit were both in the Void Sky 8 Steps realm. Mu Qinshui had just woken up. Although she was very vague about the realms after the Pilgrimage realm, she was clear about many things after Zhuowen's introduction. After the Pilgrimage realm was the Deity Transformation realm, and after the Deity Transformation realm was the Virtual Sky world. Above the Virtual Sky world was the Heaven-Breaking realm. It was said that there had never been a Heaven-Breaking realm cultivator in the 8 heavenly domains. The master of a heavenly domain was considered the pinnacle existence in this galaxy. The master of a heavenly domain was only at the Void Sky 9 Steps realm. It could be said that those who reached the Void Sky 8 Steps realm were the pinnacle figures in this galaxy. Mu Qinshui also knew about Zhuowen's realm. He was only at the Void Sky 4 Steps realm, but he actually knew such a powerful cultivator. In particular, the Emperor's spirit actually addressed Zhuowen as master. This made Mu Qinshui shocked, but more than that, she was delighted. She knew that with such a powerful servant, there was no need to worry about Zhuowen's safety. "Little girl, do you still remember this dragon lord?" Xiao Hei licked his lips and immediately approached Mu Qinshui, asking with a smile. Mu Qinshui's beautiful eyes turned slightly and fell on Xiao Hei. A charming smile appeared on her face as she said, "Xiao Hei, how could I not remember?" Xiao Hei chuckled and said, "You guys can be considered to have cultivated to a positive result. It wasn't easy. Brat, this little girl is really good to you. You have to treat her well in the future." Mu Qinshui's beautiful eyes were as gentle as water as she looked at Zhuowen beside her. Zhuowen laughed and hugged Mu Qinshui's slender waist. "Do I need you to tell me that?" Mu Qinshui rolled her eyes at Zhuowen. Her graceful bearing and poise had a unique charm to it. Even Zhuowen was a little dazed by her. Hey, can the two of you stop showing off your affection? This old man can't take it anymore." Old Man Wuqing, who was sitting on the stone bench, picked up a cup of tea and drank it in one gulp as he grumbled in dissatisfaction. Zhuowen shrugged, not minding Elder Wuqing's rude attitude. Instead, he looked apologetically at Mu Qinshui. "Husband, you should go. Didn't you just tell me that you have something to discuss with this senior?" Mu Qinshui said softly. She stretched out her slender jade-like hands and gently tidied up Zhuowen's messy collar, like a virtuous little wife. Zhuowen fiercely kissed Mu Qinshui's fragrant lips and said, Qinshui, you've just been reborn and haven't consolidated your realm yet. I'll have Xiao Hei help you consolidate your virtual sky realm. Don't worry, you can rest assured when this dragon master does things. Xiao He patted his chest and said arrogantly. Zhuan exhorted a few more times. Finally, under the impatient urging of Old Man Wuqing, he reluctantly sat down opposite Old Man Wuqing. What a waste. Brat, you spent so many divine medicines on a woman, it's really not worth it. Why don't you exchange with this old man? As soon as Zhuan sat down, Old Man Wuqing began to chatter. Of course, the topic always revolved around Zhuan's prodigal actions. Zhuan said indifferently, Senior, I'm not you, so I didn't do that. Divine medicines are precious and important, but in my heart, my wife is more important than everything. Old Man Wuqing's face stiffened. Looking at Zhuan's serious and even cold expression, he knew that Zhuan was not joking. Pursing his lips, Old Man Wuqing did not linger on this topic for too long. Instead, he took out a white jade box from his sleeve and threw it to Zhuan. This is the blood of the heavenly Tao. In these 5 years, although I haven't advanced to the 9th step of the virtual sky realm, I've benefited greatly. Zhuan took the white jade box and looked at Old Man Wuqing in surprise. 5 years is enough? Old Man Wuqing nodded and said, I've completely understood the heavenly Tao patterns. It's useless to look at them any longer. Whether I can advance to the 9th step of the virtual sky realm will depend on myself. Zhuan nodded and put away the blood of the heavenly Tao. The blood of the heavenly Tao was extremely important to him. Once his cultivation attained the 8th step of the virtual sky realm, he intended to utilize the blood of the heavenly Tao. Even though he'd made an agreement with the Tao Defiance that he couldn't utilize the blood of the heavenly Tao. However, the Tao Defiance had broken the agreement, so the agreement was naturally null and void. Moreover, the Tao Defiance weren't born from the blood of the heavenly Tao, so Zhuan utilizing the blood of the heavenly Tao wouldn't affect the Tao Defiance at all. Presently, his cultivation was still too low, so utilizing the blood of the heavenly Tao too early would only be harmful to him. Old Man Wuqing spoke indifferently, I'll only protect you for 5 years. Make the best use of it. Zhuan nodded and continued, then I'm about to leave. Senior, come with me. Old Man Wuqing nodded and didn't speak any further. After they packed up, they left the abode under Old Man Wuqing's guidance. Use this flying ship of mine. The magnetic field here is extremely terrifying, and ordinary flying ships are easily destroyed here. After they left the abode, they were greeted by the extremely terrifying magnetic field. Old Man Wuqing spoke a few words before he withdrew a flying ship from his sleeve. The flying ship wasn't large, and it had a streamlined shape. It was rather beautiful. Yuan held Mu Qinshue's hand as they entered the cabin. The king's spirit followed behind Zhuan like a loyal guard. Once everyone was seated, Old Man Wuqing, who sat in the control room at the front, immediately activated the flying ship. Swoosh! 8 terrifying rays of blue light shot out from the rear of the flying ship, and then the flying ship vanished on the spot as if it had teleported. So fast! Mu Qinshui couldn't help but exclaim as she gazed at the stars outside the cabin. They were practically unable to see the scenery of the stars clearly. Zhuan nodded to himself as well. Old Man Wuqing's flying ship was countless times faster than the God Lu. The 2 flying ships weren't on the same level at all. Zhuan rubbed his chin while he pondered in his heart. Should I ask Old Man Wuqing for a flying ship like this? Dupi City. Surrounded by stars, it was magnificent. Ever since it was surrounded by the Ziwei Galaxy, the development of Dupi City had been like a blowout. Its development speed had reached an unimaginable level. Especially the many forces around Dupi City, all of them had joined Dupi City. In the far west, there weren't many life planets at all. There were only pieces of cold meteorites. Whether it was the scenery or the comfort, it was many times worse than a life planet. If there were life planets, why would these cultivators still live on the meteorites where birds don't shit? At this moment, inside Dupi City, at the top of a huge tower, a group of Ryuka higher-ups were having an emergency meeting. This meeting was led by Long Xiaotian, Feng Shiyao, and Lu Hantian, and the atmosphere in the meeting was extremely solemn. Hantian, Senior Do Xian hasn't come out of seclusion yet? Long Xiaotian looked at Lu Hantian and asked. Lu Hantian revealed a bitter smile and said, Not yet. Although I really want to enter the place where Senior Do Xian is in seclusion, unfortunately, the restrictions there are too strong. I can't go in at all. Long Xiaolun frowned and sighed. What should we do? Wen has been gone for 5 years without any news. At this juncture, even Senior Do Xian hasn't come out of seclusion. Xiaoyun, we still have 2 days. Didn't those people give us 2 days to consider? Feng Xiao said. We really miscalculated. In such a barren place like the Far West, the attraction of a life planet can be imagined. Moreover, Dubhe City has a whole galaxy of life planets. We shouldn't have been so anxious to publicize it. Long Xiaotian said helplessly. We also didn't know that the 4 island masters in the Myriad Magnetic Sea would actually join forces to shamelessly snatch our Dubhe City. They actually want us to completely move all the people of Dubhe City away within 2 days. It's really too hateful. Lu Hantian's eyes were gloomy and his fists were clenched. There were 4 most powerful forces in the Myriad Magnet Sea, namely Shuangchong Island, Taibin Island, Changxiong Island, and Jingshan Island. The forces of the 4 great islands far exceeded the original Dubhe City, and the 4 great island masters were all powerhouses of the Void Sky 7th level. After 5 years of development, Dubhe City was actually very large. Compared with the forces of any of the 4 great islands, it was not much worse. However, now that the 4 great islands had joined forces, and Dubhe City's high-end combat power was still much weaker than the 4 great islands, it was really not a match for the 4 great islands at present. It was precisely because of the great disparity in forces that Dubhe City did not act rashly. If they really fought, Dubhe City would lose without a doubt. My lord, not good, the people of the 4 great islands have already arrived. Suddenly, outside the conference hall, a soldier in armor hurriedly ran in, his face full of panic. What? The people of the 4 great islands are here? Didn't they say that they would give us 3 days to consider? It's only been a day now, why are they here? Lu Hantian's face changed slightly. The soldier knelt on the ground, his entire body trembling with fear. Let's go out and take a look. Long Xiaoyan's face was gloomy as he led everyone out of the conference hall. At this moment, in the starry sky outside Dubhe City, densely packed flying ships surrounded Dubhe City. It looked quite hair-raising. In front of the countless fleets, 4 figures with extremely terrifying auras floated quietly, overlooking Dubhe City that was surrounded by countless planets. A planet of life. I really didn't expect that after millions of years, I could still see a planet of life with such a strong life aura in the land of the Far West. Chapter 21-23. Supreme Glorious Sunblade, I want 1/3 of the vital planets in Dubhe City. I don't think the 3 of you have any objections, right? The enchanting woman opened her charming eyes and looked at the other 3 with a charming smile. She didn't care about their ugly expressions at all. Lu Manfeng, isn't your appetite too big? A middle-aged man with a cold expression said coldly. Island Master Chow, are you not convinced? Then how many vital planets do you think this little girl should want? The enchanting woman Lu Manfeng's smile became more and more intense, but the coldness also became more and more obvious. For a moment, the atmosphere between the 2 became much more solemn and sharp. All right, the 2 of you stop messing around. We haven't taken Dubhe City yet. Instead, we're fighting among ourselves. An old man in his 60s wearing a long robe landed between Lu Manfeng and Chao Tairen with a headache and shouted in a deep voice. Most of the cultivators in the Myriad Magnetic Sea recognized the 4 people standing in front of the fleet. The enchanting woman was Jingshan Island's island master, Lu Manfeng. The middle-aged man arguing with the enchanting woman was Shuangchong Island's island master, Chao Tairen. The old man in his 60s wearing a long robe was Changxiong Island's island master, Zhang Jiqing. As for the remaining person, he was a silent man in his 30s wearing a black robe. This person was Taibin Island's island master, Song Binhong. Zhang Jiqing's persuasion obviously had some effect. Lu Manfeng and Chao Tairen snorted coldly and stopped arguing. Bush. At this moment, several figures flew out from Dubhe City. The leaders were Long Xiaotian, Feng Shiyao, and Lu Hantian. Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and Hongshan were also among them. The four of you, what's going on? Didn't you say you would give us 3 days to think about it? Long Xiaotian said with a gloomy face. Chao Tairan sneered. Giving you 1 day to think about it is already the greatest kindness to you. You actually want 3 days? Are you courting death? You? Lu Hantian was furious, but he was stopped by Long Xiaolun. Island Master Zhang, what's going on? You have to give me an explanation, Long Xiaotian said as he looked at the old man. Zhang Jiqing coughed lightly and said indifferently, it's like this. The other 3 can't wait, so I can only give you 1 day. How about this? You move away immediately, and we won't hurt anyone in Dubhe City. Elder Zhang, why are you being so courteous with these people? Just kill them all. The 4 of us can divide the vital planet of Heavenly Pivot City equally. Why bother? Chao Tairan said disapprovingly. The expressions of Long Xiaotian and the others changed slightly, and they glared at Chao Turan. This Chao Ran was really too detestable. He was actually so vicious. Zhang Jiqing only looked at Long Xiaotian with a smile and said, City Lord Long, I think you are also a smart person. The patience of the 4 of us is very limited. If you want to drag this out, I might have to take Island Lord Chao's suggestion. Such an arrogant threat made Long Xiaotian furious, but he still suppressed his anger and said, give me half a day. Once half a day is over, we will move away. You don't know what's good for you. Half a day? I won't give you even a quarter of an hour. Due to Lu Manfeng, Chao Tairan had been suppressing a fire in his heart. Now that he saw Long Xiaotian still wanted to drag this out, he didn't hide his killing intent at all and rushed towards Long Xiaotian. Zhang Jiqing and the others just watched silently. They didn't plan to stop Chao Tairan at all. Bastard! Long Xiaolun was trembling with anger. Lu Hantian even erupted with his aura, and the several people who came with him also used their own moves. Just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. Chao Tairan snorted coldly. He reached out with his right hand, and terrifying divine power surged out. It turned into a terrifying giant hand that was like the might of the heavens, and it suddenly crushed down. Bang! An ear-piercing explosion rang out. Long Xiaotian and the rest shuddered as they spat out a mouthful of blood. Subsequently, they retreated rapidly. However, Chao Tairan's attack had been neutralized as a result. You actually blocked my attack? Chao Tairan's eyes were filled with surprise as his gaze fell on Long Xiaotian's hand. He saw Long Xiaotian holding a dazzling golden saber that was like a scorching sun. This saber was too dazzling, and its aura was exceptionally powerful and terrifying. It was simply much more powerful than an ordinary Void Sky Divine artifact. The saber? It's not a Void Sky Divine artifact at all. Could it be a secondary Void Sky Divine artifact? Chao Tairan's gaze was fixed on the saber in Long Xiaotian's hand. This saber was the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber that Kyun had obtained from Yao Xiong. Although the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber wasn't a true secondary Void Sky Divine artifact, it was infinitely close. It was many times more powerful than Void Sky Divine artifacts. Back then, Yao Xiong had relied on the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber to fight against the peak 7th step Monarch Spirit. If it wasn't for the Heavenly Domain's Starry Sky essence, both sides would have been injured, and Yao Xiong wouldn't have died. Long Xiaotian's cultivation was only at the 2nd step of Void Sky. Although he had the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber, the gap between him and Chao Ren was too great. Therefore, he was repelled in one move and even suffered heavy injuries. Not only Chao Tairan, but Lu Manfeng, Zhang Jiqing and Song Binhong, who were watching the battle from the side, also narrowed their eyes when they saw the extraordinary Supreme Glorious Sun Saber. Then, the 3 of them exchanged a glance and saw the burning desire in each other's eyes. Originally, the life planet in Heavenly Pivot City was enough for them to covet. But now, they didn't expect that Long Xiaotian actually had a secondary Void Sky Divine artifact. It was a pleasant surprise. In an instant, the 4 of them were filled with murderous intent. As long as they killed Long Xiaoyan, the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber would be theirs. Long Xiaoyan's face was full of bitterness. He also felt the terrifying murderous intent from Chao Tairan and the other three. The supreme glorious sun saber was given to him by Zhuoan as a precaution. He had never thought of using it. However, Chao Tairan's attack was too terrifying. If he didn't use the supreme glorious sun saber, he would have died without a doubt. An ant like you doesn't deserve to have such a treasure. Hand it over. Chao Tairan was the first to rush out. His right hand formed a claw and grabbed at Long Shaun. This time, Chao Tairan used his full strength. The terrifying divine power formed a terrifying hurricane that swept out in all directions. Long Xiaoyan's face changed drastically. Chao Tairan was really going for the kill this time. Even if Long Xiaotian had the supreme glorious sun saber, he would most likely be killed by Chao Tairan's attack. Xiaotian! Feng Xiao shouted and was about to rush over, but she was stopped by Lu Hantian. Boom! Chao Tairan's attack was too fast. It instantly fell in front of Long Xiaotian. Long Xiaotian only felt that his whole body was unable to move. The terrifying air pressure around him was constantly surging and gathering towards his limbs as if it was going to crush his whole body into powder. The shadow of death shrouded Long Xiaotian's entire body. Rumble! A figure quickly rushed over and blocked in front of Long Xiaoyan. Then, the figure also threw out a punch and blasted on Chao Tairan's claw. Then, there was a dense explosion that resounded continuously in the starry sky. Bang! Chao Tairan's pupils shrank, and he could not help but retreat repeatedly. The figure was almost the same, also retreating repeatedly. However, in the process of retreating, he grabbed Long Xiaotian and brought him away. Long Xiaoyan only felt his shoulder tighten, and then he flew back. When he stopped, the right hand that grabbed his shoulder loosened. Only then did he see the appearance of the person who saved him. This person was dressed in coarse clothes, with long white hair draped over his shoulders. He was an old man in his 70s. Senior Dou Xian, you finally came out of seclusion. Long Xiaotian said with a light sigh. Dou Xian nodded. He also knew that Long Xiaotian was Zhuowen's father, so his attitude did not dare to be too high and mighty. Brother Long, what's going on? Why did the 4 great island masters of the myriad magnetic sea come to our Dubhe city? Dou Xian asked in a deep voice. Long Xiaotian sighed softly and explained the matter in detail. Dou Xian's face was gloomy. He looked at Chao Tairan, Zhang Jiqing and said, "The 4 of you, aren't you too rude? These life planets have owners. What's the difference between you robbing and robbing like this?" Chao Tairan's gaze was solemn as he sized Dou Xian up and down. He sneered and said, "I really didn't expect you to actually advance to the Void Sky 7th step. It seems that you had some opportunities." Zhang Jiqing chuckled and said, "City Lord Dou, since you have also advanced to the Void Sky 7th step, then both sides take a step back. Hand over all the life planets in Dubhe City and the broadsword in this person's hand, and we won't make things difficult for you. How about it?" Dou Xian narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Sorry, I can't make the decision in Dubhe City now." "Are you kidding? Aren't you the city lord of Dubhe City? Why can't you make the decision?" Lu Monfeng's beautiful eyes revealed a mocking look. Dou Xian said indifferently, "Dubhe City has long been transferred to an expert by this Dou. If the 4 of you want to live, you'd better retreat quickly. When that expert returns, the 4 of you will probably be in big trouble." Chao Ren looked at Dou Xian strangely and laughed loudly, saying, "What a joke. Your lie is too shallow. You actually want to deceive us? Ha." Zhang Jiqing also shook his head and said, "Dou Xian, we don't intend to do anything to you, but you really don't know what you're talking about. You even used this kind of trick to deceive a 3-year-old child. Don't you feel ashamed?" Chapter 21-24. Rushing over, you sure talk a lot of nonsense. Chao Tairan snorted coldly and took the lead. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. Sounds of air exploding could be heard. They were endless as they surged over, causing the surrounding starry sky to distort and collapse. Dou Xian's eyes were solemn as he transmitted his voice to Long Xiaoyan. "Brother Long, you guys go back to Dubhe City first. I've already arranged for people to activate the defensive formation. It was set up by Senior Zhua and is quite powerful." Long Xiaodan nodded and tossed the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber to Dou Xian, saying, "This is the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber, take it first. These 4 are not easy to deal with, we can only rely on you." The moment Dou Xian held the Supreme Glorious Sun Blade, his eyes shone with a terrifying light. He muttered in a low voice, "This blade is so powerful. Could it be a secondary heaven-breaking divine artifact?" Chao Tairan was extremely fast. In an instant he rushed over. The fist energy that could shatter any galaxy was like a vast and unparalleled mountain. It came crashing down and enveloped Dou Xian. When Dou Xian reacted, the fist energy was already very close. However, he was not afraid. His right hand gripped the hilt of the blade tightly, and then he lifted it gently. The blade of the blade suddenly flicked upward. An earth-shattering and terrifying blade energy flew out. Blazing golden lights surrounded the blade energy. It was like a sun that had been magnified countless times. It rose slowly and was extremely fast. Rumble! Chao Tairan's fist energy was instantly shattered into nothingness by the blade energy. Chao Tairan's eyes narrowed. He stomped his right foot and retreated rapidly. However, the blade energy was too fast. It was like a maggot in one's bones. It arrived before Chao Tairan in an instant. Chao Tairan roared angrily. He took out a long black iron rod and swung it. Thousands of rod shadows burst out, layer upon layer, and formed a vast and boundless ocean. Bang, bang, bang. The saber chi was extremely sharp. When it smashed onto the vast sea of shadows formed by the thousands of rod shadows, it actually smashed it into smithereens like a hot knife through butter. Chao Tairan's face was extremely ugly. The thousands of rod shadows were instantly destroyed. He retreated again. He swung the iron rod in his hand and smashed it heavily on the blade energy with the force of a mountain. Rumble! The saber chi was instantly broken, and Chao Tairan walked out with a gloomy expression. He never imagined that a mere strand of saber chi would actually put him in such a sorry state. It was truly detestable to the extreme. On the other hand, Dou Xian's face was filled with joy. The power of the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber was simply too powerful. Although he had just reached the Void Sky 7th step, he was confident that he could defeat an expert at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step with this saber. He might not be a match for an expert at the Void Sky 8th step. "Let's attack together," Chao Tairan said gloomily as he looked at Zhang Ziqing and the other 2 who were still watching the show. Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong both looked at Zhang Ziqing, obviously waiting for the latter to make the decision. Zhang Ziqing smiled faintly and said, "Make your move. Let's discuss the distribution of the saber after we get it." Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong nodded. Soon after, the 3 of them rushed out in a flash. Together with Chao Tairan, they rushed towards Dou Xian. "Hi, you're dead." Chao Tairan laughed heartily and followed Zhang Ziqing into the battle. Dou Xian's gaze became extremely solemn. Although his heart was filled with bitterness, he had no choice but to face it. Dubhe City was his territory after all. Although it was now Zhuowen's in name, he had already pledged allegiance to Zhuowen. Naturally, he could not give up this family property just like that. Dou Xian snorted coldly. With a twist of his right wrist, the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber suddenly shot out rays of terrifying saber light. Each ray of saber light was like a blazing sun, exceptionally dazzling and dazzling. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, Dou Xian's entire body was covered in dense saber light. It was as if he was surrounded by the sun. It was extremely terrifying. Zhang Ziqing and the other 3 took out their respective life void sky divine artifacts. At the same time, they used terrifying divine abilities and blasted out one after another. The 5 of them collided in an instant. Terrifying sounds of explosions reverberated continuously like the echoes of an empty valley. The aftermath of the battle was extremely terrifying. In the starry sky, dense invisible ripples erupted. These invisible ripples were like waves, spreading out in all directions. It looked extremely terrifying and dense. The fleet brought by the 4 island masters retreated one after another, not daring to get any closer. They knew very well that once they got close, even the flying ships and the cultivators on board would be finished. As for the area where Dubhe City was located, an extremely wide defensive array had already appeared. Long Xiaotian and the other cultivators of Dubhe City were all silently watching the battle between the 5 great experts. Everyone knew that the victory or defeat of this battle depended on the 5 great experts. Once one side was defeated, the other side would immediately lead their troops to attack. In this kind of battle, the role of the top experts was to dominate the overall situation. Therefore, the key to the battle was the success or failure of the 5 great experts. Dou Xian roared angrily. Holding the supreme glorious sun saber in his right hand, he suddenly spun it around his waist. A blazing halo extended out and exploded continuously. It was truly terrifying to listen to. Under the bombardment of this terrifying halo, Zhang Jiqing and the other 3 could not help but retreat dozens of steps. Die! Dou Xian's long hair fluttered as he instantly slashed out 4 times with the supreme glorious sun saber. Each slash was exceptionally terrifying as it swept towards Zhang Jiqing and the other 3 as if it could crush them into powder. Zhang Jiqing and the other 3 revealed solemn expressions as they used their respective Void Sky Divine artifacts to block the incoming saber lights. Attack with all your might. Zhang Jiqing snorted coldly as he stabbed out with the blue longsword in his hand. This sword light condensed into a point that looked extremely sharp and terrifying. It cut through the starry sky and swept towards Dou Xian. Chao Tairan, Song Binhong, and Lu Manfeng nodded one after another and used their respective ultimate skills. For a time, Dou Xian was completely suppressed. Time passed slowly. Half a day had passed since the battle began. Bang! With a muffled groan, a figure flew out in a rather sorry state. Everyone in Dubhe City looked over. The moment they saw the figure clearly, their faces turned pale. This was because this figure was none other than Dou Xian. At this moment, Dou Xian's right hand clenched the supreme glorious sun saber tightly as his gaze became extremely solemn and unwilling. But soon, his expression changed drastically. He saw Zhang Jiqing's group of 4 rushing over, not giving Dou Xian the slightest chance to catch his breath. Dou Xian exerted all his strength and slashed out a saber attack, but it was blocked by Chao Tairan, Song Binhong and Lu Manfeng's joint efforts. Zhang Jiqing took a step in the air and arrived in front of Dou Xian in an instant like a stream of light. At this moment, Dou Xian was already at the point of being a lamp without oil. The moment he saw Zhang Jiqing, he raised the supreme glorious sun saber with difficulty and slashed at Zhang Jiqing. Unfortunately, Zhang Jiqing twisted his wrist and the long sword in his hand swept out at a strange angle. It actually directly sent the supreme glorious sun saber in Dou Xian's hand flying. Zhang Jiqing slashed out again. The sword light pierced through Dou Xian's chest and exploded into a cloud of blood mist, while the latter flew out with a muffled groan. He only barely managed to stop his figure several tens of thousands of miles away. Fortunately, Zhang Jiqing's attention was no longer on Dou Xian. Otherwise, as long as Zhang Jiqing added another slash, Dou Xian's head would fall to the ground. It's still my first time seeing a secondary heaven-breaking divine artifact. This thing's power is really extraordinary. Zhang Jiqing took a step out and grabbed the supreme glorious sun saber, brandishing the saber with a blazing look in his eyes. Zhang Jiqing was naturally aware of Dou Xian's cultivation. He had just advanced to Void Sky 7th step. His realm had not even completely stabilized yet. Logically speaking, Dou Xian was not a match for any one of the 4 of them at all. But relying on this supreme glorious sun saber, he forcibly fought with the 4 of them for several hundred rounds before finally being defeated by them. It could be seen from this how extraordinary this supreme glorious sun saber was. You guys will regret it. Dou Xian clutched his chest and growled with a ferocious look. But Zhang Jiqing laughed proudly and said, "Regret? You're joking with me, right?" Chao Tairan, Lu Manfeng, and Song Binhong rushed to Zhang Jiqing's side. They also looked at the supreme glorious sun saber in Zhang Jiqing's hand with blazing eyes. Zhang Jiqing naturally saw their movements. He smiled faintly and said, "The 3 of you, this saber belongs to me." I will do my best to compensate you. You also know that Changxiong Island is a treasure land. Haven't you always wanted Changxiong Island's Zhonglan's secret realm? I will give the three of you the opportunity to enter the secret realm as you wish. I will slowly compensate the three of you for other things. Chao Tairan and the other two looked at each other with hesitation. Zhang Jiqing was the strongest among the 4 island masters. His cultivation had already reached the peak of Void Sky 7th step. He was only half a step away from Void Sky 8th step. Now that Zhang Jiqing had the supreme glorious Sun Saber, the three of them had no chance of winning at all if they joined forces. The three of them had always wanted to enter Changxiong Island's Zhonglan's secret realm. It was said that the secret realm could greatly increase a cultivator's comprehension and had unimaginable benefits for cultivation breakthroughs. However, the Zhonglan's secret realm had always been hidden by Zhang Jiqing. Moreover, it was a forbidden area of Changxiong Island. Even the three of them had never entered it. This time, Zhang Jiqing even brought out the Zhonglan's secret realm. It was obvious that he was determined to obtain the supreme glorious Sun Saber. If they did not give him face, they would probably anger Zhang Jiqing. The end result would probably be very unpleasant. Island Master Zhang is the strongest. This saber should belong to you. However, Island Master Zhang, when the time comes, don't go back on your words. You should sign the contract first. Chao Tairan said in a deep voice. Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong did not say anything. They looked at Zhang Jiqing. Obviously, they had the same opinion as Chao Tairan. The corner of Zhang Jiqing's mouth curled up. He quickly signed the contract and said, "Do you believe me now?" Chao Tairan nodded. Then, his gaze fell on the injured Dou Xian not far away. He smiled sinisterly and said, "This guy made me very embarrassed. The three of you don't have to do anything. Let me take care of him." As he spoke, Chao Tairan laughed sinisterly and rushed toward Dou Xian with great momentum. Chapter 21-25. The unlucky Chao Tairan was caught off guard and was directly hit by the flying ship. With Chao Tairan's strength, a mere flying ship couldn't cause any harm to him. However, this flying ship that suddenly flew out was different. Not only was its surface as hard as iron, but the impact was so strong that it caused Chao Tairan to feel fear. Bang! Chao Tairan groaned and flew backwards in an extremely sorry state. He only managed to stop himself after flying 10,000 miles away. He looked at the flying ship that stopped in front of Dou Xian in shock and anger. Zhang Jiqing, Lu Manfeng, and Song Binhong, who were watching from afar, were all shocked and their gazes became extremely serious. They naturally didn't care about a mere flying ship, but this flying ship that suddenly appeared in front of them was not ordinary. They had never seen a flying ship that could send an expert like Chao Tairan flying. "Sir, what do you mean by this? We don't seem to know you, right?" Chao Tairan's gaze was gloomy, but he didn't act rashly. Chao Tairan was very clear that this flying ship was very unusual. The owner of this flying ship was probably not a good person. He didn't want to offend an unknown expert. Chao Tairan was met with silence. However, the silence didn't last long. A young man in snow-white clothes slowly walked out of the flying ship's cabin door. The young man's right hand was holding the hand of a beautiful woman, but his eyes were filled with terrifying killing intent. Fourth step in the void sky? Chao Ren was stunned as he looked at the young man in snow-white clothes strangely. He didn't expect that the owner of this flying ship was only a cultivator who had reached the fourth step in the void sky. As for the beautiful woman beside the young man in white, Chao Ren was stunned. However, the woman's cultivation was not high enough, only at the first step in the void sky. The cultivation of this man and woman was really low. In Chao Tairan's eyes, they were no different from ants. "Senior Zhua." The moment he saw the young man in snow-white clothes, Dou Xian's eyes lit up. He hurriedly came to Zhuowen's side, but his face was burning hot and he felt guilty. Zhuowen waved his hand and looked coldly at Chao Tairan, Zhang Jiqing, and the others. He asked, "What happened?" Dou Xian sighed softly and recounted the entire story. Zhuowen's eyes grew increasingly dark and cold. He even flew into a rage. He did not expect that the forces of the myriad magnetic sea's 4 great islands were actually so shameless, to actually want to snatch the life planet outside Dubhe City in public. It was seriously too much. Seeing the anger on Zhuowen's face, Dou Xian's heart trembled. He knew that the 4 great island masters had suffered. He didn't know how strong Zhuowen was, but he did know that the king's spirit accompanying Zhuowen was no ordinary being. It was an elite with 8 levels of void sky. A king's spirit could easily crush Zhang Jiqing and the others, even without the help of the supreme shining sun knife. It turns out that you're just a little brat with 4 levels of void sky. It's really rare to have such a hard-flying ship. Obediently hand over this flying ship. Chao Taran raised his eyes and said with his nostrils pointing to the sky. Jun just smiled and said, "You've got guts, old man." Chao Taran narrowed his eyes and said angrily, "Little bastard, you've got guts. How dare you insult this old man? Fine, this old man will teach you a lesson today." Saying that, Chao Taran stepped on the air with his right foot and rushed straight toward Jun like a flying shuttle. Zhuowen stood in place, but he was not afraid. Instead, there was a mocking look on his face. Chao Taran naturally saw the mocking expression between Zhuowen's brows. Although he was surprised in his heart, he was even more furious. He, a dignified cultivator at the 7th step of the Void Sky realm, had made a move against an ant at the 4th step of the Void Sky realm like Zhuowen, so the latter ought to be trembling in fear. However, not only was Zhuowen not frightened, he even revealed such a mocking smile. How could he not be angry? Chao Taran was extremely fast, and in an instant he was in front of Zhuowen. Chao Taran looked down at the young man in white in front of him. He stretched out his right hand and mercilessly punched Zhuowen's chest, wanting to turn him into dust. But, unfortunately, at the instant Chao Taran's fist had yet to hit Zhuowen, a large hand swept over at an even faster speed and fiercely slapped Chao Taran. This slap was very heavy. It directly left a deep red palm print on Chao Taran's right cheek, and Chao Taran was sent flying backwards in a sorry state. Chao Taran was stunned. He shook his head and roared angrily. Just as he was about to search for the culprit, a hand appeared on his left cheek like a ghost. Puh! Another crisp slap sounded, and another deep palm print appeared on Chao Taran's left cheek. Chao Taran, who had just stabilized his body, spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth. His mind was somewhat muddled. Zhang Jiqing, Lu Manfeng, and Song Binhong's gazes immediately became much more serious. Their gazes were fixated on a stalwart figure not far away from Chao Taran. This was a middle-aged man in a blue robe. His eyes were filled with killing intent. With a slap, Chao Taran was unable to resist at all and could only passively take the beating. "It's an emperor's spirit. Why is this guy here?" Zhang Jiqing murmured in a low voice. "Emperor's spirit, it's actually this crazy guy. This guy took advantage of his identity as a rogue cultivator and did a lot of terrifying things. But why is this emperor's spirit so strong?" Lu Manfeng was also quite surprised to hear this. The Emperor's Spirit used to be at the peak of the Void Sky 7th level. It was a well-known name in the Far West. Because the Emperor's Spirit was a rogue cultivator, he did not have any background. He was unrestrained and did not have any weaknesses. Many forces in the Far West did not dare to offend this ancestor. After all, the Emperor's Spirit was so strong, and he was alone. If he could not beat them, he could just leave. If he could beat them, he would basically wipe out the entire family that offended him. It was a vicious method. This kind of troublesome guy, even Zhang Jiqing and the other island masters did not want to provoke. But now this guy suddenly appeared and saved the white-clothed youth. Could it be that the white-clothed youth was the Emperor's Spirit's descendant? No, this Void Sky 8th level? Zhang Jiqing's pupils shrank. He had been wondering how the king's spirit had been able to manipulate Chao Taran so easily, but now he had no idea what was going on. Only now did he notice that the Emperor's Spirit's aura was extremely terrifying. It was even more terrifying than his own. Zhang Jiqing was at the peak of the Void Sky 7th level. But now, the Emperor's Spirit's aura was even more terrifying than his. There was only one possibility, and that was that the Emperor Spirit's cultivation was higher than his. How did this guy level up? Zhang Jiqing muttered to himself. He had fought with the Emperor Spirit before, and the two of them were evenly matched. Now that his opponent had surpassed him, Zhang Jiqing naturally did not feel good. Pa. Chao Tairan was almost always in a state of confusion. Every time he was about to make a move, that big hand would mercilessly slap him in the face, making him dizzy and unable to tell north from south. When Chao Tairan's head was swollen like a pig's, the King Spirit's right hand became a claw, and it cut off Chao Tairan's limbs to prevent him from moving. Then, it grabbed Chao Tairan's collar and brought him to Zhuowen. King Spirit, what is your relationship with this person? Zhang Jiqing spoke at this moment, but his voice was full of solemnity. If this kid is your junior, we can give you face and not pursue this kid's mistakes, Zhang Jiqing said coldly. We don't need Dubhe City's vital planet, but you have to let Chao Tairan go. The Emperor Spirit did not speak. Instead, he looked at Zhuowen and said, Master, what do you think I should do? When the Emperor Spirit said this, Zhang Jiqing, Song Binhong, and Lu Monfeng's pupils shrank to the size of needles. They did not expect the Emperor Spirit, who was at the Void Sky 8th level, to call a brat his master. Was there something wrong with their ears? Zhuowen slowly stepped forward and said to Zhang Jiqing, You are giving us face, aren't you? Do you think your face is worth anything? Since you are all here, there is no need for you to leave. Zhang Jiqing came back to his senses and said with a gloomy smile, You want us to stay? Aren't you being a little too arrogant? Do you think you are qualified? As he spoke, Zhang Jiqing waved his right hand. The cannons on the densely packed flying ships behind him were all aimed at Zhuowen and Dubhe City behind him. It could be said that the attacks of countless flying ships had completely enveloped Dubhe City. Zhang Jiqing only needed to give the order, and such a dense attack would be enough to destroy Dubhe City. I said you can't leave, so don't even think about leaving. Zhuowen's gaze grew colder and colder. Soon after, a short old man slowly walked out of the flying ship beside him. The old man snorted, and the magnetic field around them became many times stronger. Boom, boom. The countless flying ships that surrounded Dubhe City were all blown to smithereens by this terrifying magnetic field. The fragments formed a dense pile of debris in the starry sky. Don't aim these things at me. I'm not used to it. Old man Wu Qing had his hands behind his back. Although he was short, he looked like an extraordinary elite. He stood in the air and said those words in a very pretentious manner. Chapter 21-26. Tanzhong Island. Could it be old man Wu Qing? Zhang Jiqing and the other two looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. Old man Wu Qing's great name resounded like thunder in the hearts of the experts in the far west. It could be said that old man Wu Qing was a taboo existence in the hearts of the experts in the far west. He was known as the strongest cultivator in the far west. Zhang Jiqing and the other two were the leaders of the peak forces in the myriad magnetic sea, so they had a deeper understanding of old man Wu Qing. It was precisely because they had a deeper understanding that they were even more afraid. Not only was this old man a powerful cultivator at the 8th step of the Void Sky realm, but he was also a divine array master who was proficient in array Dao. It could be said that he was much more powerful and terrifying than the Emperor Spirit who had just advanced to the 8th step of the Void Sky realm. Zhang Jiqing was very clear that as long as old man Wu Qing made a move, the three of them would have no chance of winning. They might even be killed in an instant. Senior Wu Qing, may I know why you came out of seclusion? Zhang Jiqing immediately lowered his posture and bowed with cupped hands. Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong were even more submissive, not daring to be the slightest bit rash. On the other hand, Dou Xian had a face full of shock. He had naturally heard of old man Wu Qing's name. It was just that old man Wu Qing was too mysterious. No one knew the exact location of old man Wu Qing's cave abode, and old man Wu Qing had almost become a mysterious powerhouse. Dou Xian knew that old man Wu Qing's appearance definitely had a lot to do with Zhuan. Thinking of this, Dou Xian looked at Zhuan with even more reverence. Old man Wu Qing still had his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "This little guy wants me to come out of seclusion, so I came out. Is there a problem?" Zhang Jiqing's gaze turned cold. He finally began to face the white-clothed youth who was holding the hand of the beautiful woman. His brows furrowed slightly, and his eyes revealed a rare look of fear. Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong were both silent, but their gazes became extremely cautious and serious. They were secretly guessing the identity of this white-clothed youth. Not only did the Emperor's spirit call him master, but it was also clear that an expert like old man Wuqing had come out of seclusion. "May I know little brother's name?" Zhang Jiqing asked with a smile as he cupped his hands toward Yun. Yun was as calm as an ancient well. He glanced indifferently at Zhang Jiqing and spread out his right hand. "You want to know my name? Return the saber in your hand to me first." The smile on Zhang Jiqing's face gradually froze. His eyes became gloomy and his brows furrowed. The supreme glorious sun saber was a secondary heaven-breaking divine artifact. He had never seen such a powerful divine artifact in the entire far west land. Now that he had obtained the supreme dazzling sun saber, how could he possibly think of selling it? What? Unwilling to hand over the supreme glorious sun saber? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth were filled with a cold smile, and his gaze became increasingly sharp. The king's spirit took a step forward and directed his murderous intent at Zhang Jiqing, suppressing him. Zhang Jiqing revealed a carefree smile and said, "Then I'll hand over the supreme glorious sun saber." Then, Zhang Jiqing swung his right hand and threw the supreme glorious sun saber to Zhuan. Zhuan frowned slightly and reached out with his right hand. Divine power poured out and turned into a giant hand that grabbed at the supreme glorious sun saber. Bang! However, the moment Zhuan grabbed the supreme glorious sun saber, a terrifying scarlet energy burst out from the saber's blade. Then Zhuan gloomily discovered that the supreme glorious sun saber, which was originally in midair, had disappeared into thin air. On the other hand, the scarlet-red energy was like maggots that latched onto the large hand formed from Zhuowen's divine energy and actually corroded it completely. Zhuowen's gaze fell on Zhang Jiqing in front of him and found that Zhang Jiqing had disappeared without him noticing. A teleportation array? This Zhang Jiqing has been stalling for time. I'm afraid he's setting up this teleportation array. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy as he stepped forward and landed where Zhang Jiqing had disappeared. His right hand seals changed as he deduced the teleportation array's runes and operating trajectory. "Senior Wu Qing, you should be able to stop Zhang Jiqing, right? Why didn't you do anything just now?" Zhuan looked at old Wu Qing gloomily. Old Wu Qing spread his hands and said, "Little guy, I only promised to protect you, not to be your fighter. Don't get it wrong." Zhuan felt a little helpless and said in a deep voice, "Then do you know where Zhang Jiqing is being teleported?" Old Wu Qing said unhurriedly, "He should be returning to Long Xiong Island. That is Zhang Jiqing's nest, but you need to hurry. Otherwise, Zhang Jiqing will take Long Xiong Island with him." Zhuan looked at the king's spirit, who nodded and flew forward. A terrifying aura enveloped Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong, who were still in a daze. They couldn't help but tremble. "You two have two choices now. One is to be my slave for 1,000 years, and the other is to die. Do not doubt my methods," Zhuan said coldly. Lu Manfeng and Song Binhong looked at each other. Just as they were about to say something, the king's spirit's halberd flew towards Song Binhong. Song Binhong tried to block it, but the powerful force made him spit out blood. He was injured internally. The king's spirit stepped forward, not giving Song Binhong a chance to breathe. He wanted to finish him off with a single strike. Song Binhong did not hesitate to beg for mercy. "I am willing to be your slave." The emperor's spirit looked at Zhuowen. After seeing the latter nod his head, the emperor's spirit put away his halberd and looked at Lu Manfeng with cold eyes. Lu Manfeng's face turned pale, and she quickly surrendered. Chao Tairan, who had been beaten by the king's spirit, had regained his composure. Seeing Song Binhong and Lu Manfeng surrender, he didn't dare fight back. If he did, he'd be dead for sure. After planting slave seals on the three of them, Zhuan said to Mu Chenxue, "Chen Shui, you go back to Dubhe City first. I need to chase after Zhang Jiqing. I will be back in a while." Mu Chenxue nodded. She knew the severity of the situation, so she said, "Be careful on the road." Zhuowen nodded and took the king's spirit to Old Man Wu Qing's airship. Hey, this is this old man's flying ship. Who allowed you to use this old man's flying ship? Old Man Wu Qing shouted. When he was about to put away the airship, Zhuowen activated it and disappeared. A jade bottle appeared in Old Man Wu Qing's hand. Zhuowen's voice rang in Old Man Wu Qing's mind. Old Man Wu Qing, this is the heavenly domain star essence. Sell this airship to me. This is the reward. Old Man Wu Qing frowned and opened the bottle. His eyes lit up and he nodded. This kid is not ordinary rich. He even has this kind of thing. Not bad, not bad. With that, Old Man Wu Qing put away the jade bottle and slowly entered Dubby City with his hands behind his back. King Spirit, do you know where Changxiong Island is? In the cockpit, Zhuowen looked at King Spirit and asked. King Spirit nodded and said, Master, don't worry. I know where Changxiong Island is. It is not far from here. With the speed of this airship, we will arrive very quickly. Changxiong Island was located in the north of the far west. There were endless asteroid belts here, and it looked like ruins. If one was not careful, the ship could be destroyed. In the center of the asteroid belt, there was a circular asteroid that looked like an island. This was Changxiong Island. In the asteroid belt outside of Changxiong Island, a white light appeared. Then an old man in his 60s walked out of the white light. The old man held a golden broadsword in his right hand, and his eyes became very serious. Take the Zhanglan's secret realm and escape to the far west. This old man was Zhang Jiqing. The reason he came back in person and did not leave immediately was because of the Zhanglan's secret realm on Changxiong Island. The Zhanglan's secret realm was a strange item that Zhang Jiqing obtained in the Yin, Qing, Yuan, and K world. There was no life in the small world, but it had an extremely powerful characteristic. It could greatly increase the comprehension of cultivators who entered the Zhanglan's secret realm, and their cultivation speed would be much faster than usual. Zhang Jiqing's talent in the early years was not strong. It was very poor. However, after accidentally obtaining the Zhanglan's secret realm, Zhang Jiqing's cultivation speed increased too much. It also allowed Zhang Jiqing to improve step by step until he reached the peak of the 7th level of the virtual sky realm. With Zhang Jiqing's talent in the early years, the true god realm was already his limit, let alone the virtual sky world. Zhang Jiqing would not let go of such a treasure, so he specially came back to take the Zhanglan's secret realm away. He knew very well that even if he abandoned the entire Changxiong Island, as long as the Zhanglan's secret realm still existed, he could definitely cultivate a force that was not weaker than Changxiong Island in a short time. It could be said that the Zhanglan's secret realm was Zhang Jiqing's foundation. After entering the core area of Changxiong Island, Zhang Jiqing rushed to the place where the Zhanglan's secret realm was located. The entrance to the Zhanglan's secret realm was a green vortex that kept spinning. On both sides of the green vortex, two cultivators with strong auras were guarding the entrance. Island Lord. Seeing Zhang Jiqing come, the two cultivators nodded and saluted with fanatical eyes. Zhang Jiqing nodded and said in a deep voice, "Call all the disciples in the Zhanglan's secret realm out. I have something to announce." The two cultivators looked at each other. Although they were puzzled by Zhang Jiqing's actions, they still did as he said. After arranging for all the disciples to leave the Zhanglan's secret realm, Zhang Jiqing waved his sleeve and put the Zhanglan's secret realm away. He said, "I have some matters to attend to and have to leave for a while. During this time, no one is allowed to enter Changxiong Island. Also, activate the Great Protective Formation." Chapter 21-27. Zhanglan's secret territory. However, before Zhang Jiqing could get far, he was knocked back to the sky above Changxiong Island by a flying ship. Zhang Jiqing's eyes were gloomy as he swung the supreme glorious sun blade in his hand. The blade radiance that was as hot as the sun poured out like rain and engulfed the flying ship in front of him. A majestic figure flew out from the flying ship. Countless halberd shadows poured out and blocked the terrifying blade radiance. Zhang Jiqing looked at the figure and knew something was wrong. He immediately retreated. The majestic figure that appeared was none other than the Emperor spirit that was chasing after him. The flying ship was extremely fast and blocked Zhang Jiqing's path. Die for this old man. Zhang Jiqing's eyes were ferocious as he raised the supreme glorious sun blade above his head and slashed down. The saber shadow slashed out like a saber cutting through water. Then, a saber light that was much larger than the flying ship flew out and landed heavily on the flying ship. Rumble. The moment the blade radiance hit the flying ship, a young man in a white robe stepped out slowly. His eyes were solemn and his body was surrounded by a thick purple aura. He held the glorious purple galaxy divine sword in his right hand and the purple sword that was formed by the sevenfold Tao will in his left hand. The beginning demon golden sword circled around him. The terrifying sword Qi that carried the sevenfold Tao will suddenly slashed out and turned into a supreme sword radiance that stretched across the void like a bridge. Rumble. An earth-shattering collision sound was heard and many cracks appeared in the surrounding starry sky. It looked extremely terrifying. Unfortunately, although the sword radiance was powerful, it was still weaker than the blade radiance in the end. The sword gleam shattered into countless fragments, while the saber gleam continued to charge toward Zhuowen with irresistible force. You're overestimating yourself. You're just a fourth-stage virtual sky cultivator and you still want to block me. You're simply courting death. Zhang Jiqing grinned. His smile was full of mockery. In his opinion, Zhuowen would definitely die under this blade radiance. However, the smile on Zhang Jiqing's face only lasted for a moment before it completely stiffened. Zhuowen calmly took out a sparkling and translucent ice lotus from his spiritual ring. After that, he suddenly tossed the ice lotus out. A chilliness that was sufficient to freeze the entire starry sky surged out. The blade radiance was extremely fast and smashed heavily on the ice lotus. Then, in front of his stunned eyes, the blade radiance that was like a rainbow was frozen into a crescent-shaped ice cube. The crescent-shaped ice shattered in an instant. Zhuowen, who was holding two swords, leaped out from the countless ice shards and arrived in front of Zhang Jiqing at an extremely fast speed. His two swords unceremoniously performed the destruction sword technique. Sword Dragon Sword Art. Zhuowen with the purple sword Sword Qi Art Sword Art Art. And Sword Qi Sword Qi. The Sword Qi Art Sword Artis. Sword Qi. The two dragons continued to entangle with each other, surrounding Zhang Jiqing like two dragons swallowing a pearl. Break! Zhang Jiqing quickly slashed out a few times. The blade radiance intertwined like three suns and instantly broke the two dragons. Die! Zhang Jiqing jumped out and went straight to Zhuowen. This time, he wanted to kill Zhuowen completely. After killing him, he would immediately run away. Unfortunately, Zhuowen stood where he was and did not dodge at all. The mocking smile on his face became more and more intense. Zhang Jiqing regained his senses and heard a violent sound coming from behind him. He immediately thought of the king's spirit and his face changed slightly. After hesitating for a while, Zhang Jiqing finally gave up on Zhuowen and turned to face the king's spirit. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp and his two swords slashed out again. In the void, two huge territory phantoms appeared and smashed down heavily, causing Zhang Jiqing's body to sink involuntarily. Puchi. Zhang Jiqing was caught off guard, and the king's spirit took advantage of the opportunity to strike. With a sharp halberd, the halberd pierced through Zhang Jiqing's chest. Fortunately, Zhang Jiqing was quick-witted and managed to avoid being hit. Otherwise, the attack would have seriously injured him. Zhang Jiqing roared, hating Zhuowen to the core. Zhang Jiqing took out a scroll from his spirit ring and opened it. He bit his thumb and pressed his fingerprint on the scroll. Then, Zhang Jiqing's power suddenly increased to the level of 8 virtual sky. He broke free from the king's spirit's control and rushed toward Zhuowen with bloodshot eyes. Little bastard, you have stopped me again and again. If I don't kill you today, I will take your surname. Zhang Jiqing's voice was full of hatred and terror. Clearly, he hated Zhuowen to the core. So fast. Zhuowen squinted his eyes. Zhang Jiqing was like a ghost, and in an instant he was in front of Zhuowen. Then, the supreme shining sun blade stabbed into Zhuowen's chest, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Zhang Jiqing laughed maniacally and stabbed the supreme shining sun blade into Zhuowen's body. However, Just as he was about to pull out the supreme glorious sun saber to finish off Zhuo Wenyi, he realized that Zhuo Wenyi had already grabbed the saber hilt. Then, a vast and terrifying divine sense surged into his glabella. Soul kill. Zhuan suddenly raised his head and looked at Zhang Jiqing. His eyes were full of dizziness. Zhang Jiqing only felt a splitting headache. The divine sense that Zhuo Wenyi had extended into his spiritual space was like countless sharp hidden weapons, stirring up his spiritual space, causing his consciousness to become blurry. He involuntarily loosened his right hand that was holding the supreme glorious sun blade. Zhuan was bleeding profusely, and his face was pale. The black-robed Zhuan was summoned by him, and he punched Zhang Jiqing hard. Zhang Jiqing was in a state of confusion, and he was defenseless. He groaned and was forced to retreat. King's spirit, take him down. At this moment, the king's spirit had arrived. The halberd in his hand pierced through Zhang Jiqing's back, and then he lifted Zhang Jiqing into the air and skewered him on the halberd like a lamb skewer. At the same time, the king's spirit's hands quickly formed a seal. A terrifying power was like an invisible chain, binding Zhang Jiqing's whole body, making it impossible for him to move. Master, what do you want to do with Zhang Jiqing? The king's spirit came in front of Zhuo and threw Zhang Jiqing to the ground, forcing him to kneel in front of Zhuo. At this moment, Zhuo had pulled out the supreme shining sun blade from his chest. At the same time, he took a drop of heavenly domain star essence, and his injuries were completely healed. He looked at Zhang Jiqing, who was kneeling in front of him, and said coldly, "Tell me, how do you want to die?" Zhang Jiqing knelt on the ground. He had already regained consciousness. He just lowered his head, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. He didn't know what to say. On the other hand, countless disciples on Changxiong Island were dumbfounded. The battle between Zhang Jiqing, Zhuo, and the king's spirit had taken place in the sky above Changxiong Island. The cultivators on Changxiong Island had seen the whole battle clearly. When they saw Zhang Jiqing kneeling in front of Zhuo, the entire island was in an uproar. Zhang Jiqing was the master of their Longxiong Island, and he was a terrifying expert at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step. Now, he was kneeling in front of a white-robed youth in front of everyone. How could they not be shocked? Zhang Jiqing's whole body trembled. He felt the threat of death. When he noticed that Zhuo had heavenly domain star essence, he knew that he had made a terrible mistake this time. He had offended someone he should not have offended. Let me live. I am willing to give up the Canglan's secret realm, Zhang Jiqing said in a trembling voice. It was not easy for him to reach the peak of the 7th step Void Sky. He did not want his hundreds of thousands of years of hard work to be destroyed. He still had a long life, and he did not want to die like this. Canglan's secret realm. Zhuo looked at the king's spirit in confusion, and the king's spirit explained the Canglan's secret realm respectfully. The Canglan's secret realm can increase one's comprehension and cultivation speed? Doesn't that mean it has the same effect as the fire spirit juice? Zhuo said in surprise. He had given all the fire spirit juice he had to Ryuka. Although the fire spirit juice's effect of increasing comprehension was very good, it was useless for Void Sky. However, the effect on Void Sky cultivators was very small. Of course, it wasn't completely ineffective. It was just that the amount of fire spirit juice needed to increase comprehension was many times greater than that of true divinity cultivators. They have the same effect, but the Canglan's secret realm's effect is much better than the fire spirit juice. The Canglan's secret realm is not only for cultivators below the Void Sky realm, but also for Void Sky cultivators. It can be said that the Canglan's secret realm is very famous in the far west. Many Void Sky cultivators covet the Canglan's secret realm. If Zhang Jiqing was not strong enough, the Canglan's secret realm would have been snatched away by others. The king's spirit explained patiently. I see. Zhuowen's eyes blazed as he looked at Zhang Jiqing and said, "Hand over the Canglan's secret realm." Zhang Jiqing hesitated and said, "You have to swear to the heavenly Tao that after I hand over the Canglan's secret realm, you will let me live. The Canglan's secret realm should be on you. As long as I kill you, I can still obtain the Canglan's secret realm. Why should I do this?" Zhuo said indifferently. Zhang Jiqing's face stiffened and turned pale. After hesitating for a moment, he finally handed over the Tsang Lan's secret realm. Zhuan looked at the green vortex floating in front of him. He knew that this vortex was the entrance to the Tsang Lan's secret realm. You go in first. Zhuan looked at Zhang Jiqing and said. Zhang Jiqing's eyes were filled with helplessness. He could only follow Zhuowen's instructions and enter the Tsang Lan's secret realm. Zhuowen and the king's spirit followed closely behind and entered the green vortex. This was a strange space, surrounded by green mist. Other than that, there was nothing else. The moment Zhuowen entered this space, he felt refreshed. It was as if his internal organs had been cleansed by the green mist. He felt refreshed. Chapter 21-28. Farewell. Zhuowen's eyes lit up, and his face was filled with excitement. The Tsang Lan's secret realm's effects were not bad. After entering, he could clearly feel that his perception had increased. The instant his comprehension increased, his understanding of the martial Tao also deepened. Even his own Tao insight had unknowingly gained a deeper understanding. This Tsang Lan's secret realm is really good. Zhuan could not help but exclaim. Zhang Jiqing, who was walking in front, quickly said, My lord, this Tsang Lan's secret realm is very powerful. It is enough to create many elites for you, so, Zhuowen's face darkened. With a wave of his sleeve, the three of them left the Tsang Lan's secret realm. Zhuan did not hesitate to put away the Tsang Lan's secret realm. He said to Zhang Jiqing, This Tsang Lan's secret realm is worth your life. Zhang Jiqing's eyes lit up. Just as he was about to thank Zhuowen, his next words made him feel depressed. Zhuowen said calmly, Become my slave for eternity. Otherwise, you will die. Zhang Jiqing's face turned pale. He clenched his fists. Although he was unwilling, after feeling the strong murderous intent of the Emperor's spirit, he felt powerless. Master, Zhang Jiqing sighed and knelt in front of Zhuan. He could not bear to call him that. Follow me back to Dubhe City. Zhuan planted the slave seal in Zhang Jiqing's soul and left Changxiong Island with the two of them. As for the resources of Changxiong Island, Zhuan would not let them go. However, Changxiong Island was too big, and there were only 3 of them. They could not move so many resources. When he returned to Dubhe City, he would arrange for people to come to Changxiong Island. Of course, other than Changxiong Island, there were also the resources of Shuangchong Island, Taibin Island, and Jingshan Island. Zhuan would not let them go. After returning to Dubhe City, the higher-ups of Ryuka heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Zhuowen return safely. Then they cheered. Zhuowen did not disappoint. He arranged for many people to go to Changxiong Island, Taibin Island, Shuangchong Island, and Jingshan Island to receive resources. Are you okay? Mu Chenxue, she was like a butterfly. She landed in front of Zhuowen. She wiped Zhuowen. She wiped the dirt on Zhuowen's face and Zhuowen's. Zhuowen grinned and hugged Mu Chenxue. I'm fine. The Ryuka people, when they saw this scene, Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue, everyone, it could be said that the main reason Zhuowen had risked his life to go to the waning phases of the Great Brahma domain was because of Mu Chenxue. Behind Ryuka, Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and Sequoia stood side by side, looking a little pale. This was especially true for Yun Chuyu. Her beautiful eyes were misty, and she was secretly depressed. Chuyu, I've asked around. That woman's name is Mu Chenxue. She was Zhuowen's wife when he was still weak. Yin Bingyun noticed the dejected look on Yun Chuyu's face and tried to comfort her. Yun Chuyu forced a smile and said, Auntie, I know all of this. When Big Brother Zhuo went to the waning moons, I already knew. Then you... Yin Bingyun didn't know what to say next. Yun Chuyu smiled and said, We've already troubled Big Brother Zhuo so much. We can't let him trouble us anymore. It's time for us to leave. Sequoia nodded and said, Big Sister Chuyu is right. Big Brother Zhuo has helped us too much. It's a pity that we're too weak to help him. Leaving is the best choice. Yin Bingyun nodded and said, I'll go talk to Zhun. At this moment, Zhuan was hugging Mu Chenxue. He was speaking softly and sweetly. Chenxue, you've advanced again? You've already reached the second step of the virtual sky realm? Zhuan looked at Mu Chenxue in pleasant surprise. Mu Chenxue nodded and said, yes. I don't know why, but ever since I was reborn, my cultivation has suddenly increased to the first step of the virtual sky realm. Moreover, the energy in my body is like a furnace, extremely vigorous. While you were away, I tried to absorb the energy in my body. Then I unknowingly advanced in rank. Mu Chenxue was also quite confused. It could be said that her cultivation advancement was a bit strange. She hadn't even done anything and had easily advanced in rank. Zhuan nodded but didn't say anything. He knew that when Mu Chenxue was reborn, he had even thrown in something as precious as a level 9 divine herb. To put it bluntly, the value of the divine herb he had thrown in last time was around a third of all the resources he had obtained from the Luotian Palace ruins. There was only one level 9 divine herb, the Aurora Flower. After using it, Zhuan no longer had anything as precious as a level 9 divine herb. However, Zhuan didn't regret it. If it could increase Mu Chenxue's aptitude and cultivation, what was a level 9 divine herb? Zhuan, the three of you are planning to leave. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind Ryuka. Yin Bingyun slowly walked over with Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan. Thank you for your hospitality this time, as well as saving my life several times. I will remember all of this in my heart and will never dare to forget it. Yin Bingyun came in front of Zhuan, placed her right hand on her chest, and bowed solemnly. Zhuan waved his hand and said, "We're all friends. It's only right for me to save you. I can't just stand by and watch you die. You should be planning to leave the far west and head to the domain of stars, right? I happen to be planning to go to the domain of stars as well. Why don't we go together?" Yin Bingyun shook her head and said, "There's no need. As long as you give the three of us a flying ship, we know where to go." Zhuan frowned slightly. He noticed that Yin Bingyun's tone was a little angry, and he couldn't help but look at Yun Chuyu, who was beside Yin Bingyun. Perhaps because she noticed Zhuan's gaze, Yun Chuyu hurriedly lowered her head and didn't look at Zhuan's eyes. After a moment of silence, Zhuan nodded and sighed softly. "All right then. Be careful on your way. I will arrange for someone to give you the best flying ship. Thank you very much." Yin Bingyun's actions were swift and decisive, and she did not drag things out. After she finished speaking, she left with Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan. "Husband, these three women seem to be interested in you, especially that Yun Chuyu." Although Zhuan was slow, it didn't mean that Mu Chenxue was slow as well. She was quite observant and could tell at a glance that the three women were reluctant to part with him, but were just pretending to be calm. Especially Yun Chuyu, whose small action of lowering her head completely exposed her inner feelings. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.